Hello again, friends! And you are our friends, and welcome to another stinker edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru right here, wherever it is that you find your favorite shows on this beautiful spring, afternoon, early evening, who knows? Wherever you have found it, that's where we are. And welcome back to another episode. We're going to have your questions here on the show. Questions sent on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru or via email. That's the word I was looking for. To CornyDriveThru@gmail.com. I am your host, the great Brian Last, and of course, I now present to you the star of this drive-thru, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Yeah.
It's like deja vu all over again.
Yeah, you got me slappy right before we went on the air here. You tickled me. Not
Ooh.
Obviously, you didn't tickle me in a you didn't tickle me in a physical way. We're apart from each other. We're socially distanced, electronically distanced. But you tickled me, and then you start out with this silly introduction.
That's it.
Yeah. My face hurts. Oh, for heaven's sake. Oh! That's just why I could just randomly do that at a funeral. We could be standing there at the funeral for Prince Philip. Fucking shockingly dropped dead suddenly for no apparent reason at the age of 99. And I could go, oh, and you would just break out laughing at a solemn occasion like that.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Crown for inviting us, podcasters from America, to the funeral of Prince Philip.
I hated to turn that down.
I called you, we were on the phone, a few weeks ago, and I told you off air, I said, I just hear you doing that noise, the Jerry Clower, shoot that thing. But you, made it your own, and now, randomly throughout the day, I'll think about that noise and just start laughing.
Oh, I wish this show was as entertaining to the rest of the audience as it is to us. And I was actually in a sour mood until you started tickling me up along the taintal area right before we went on the air. I was going to mention. All right. I'll just sit here and every 30 seconds I'll do. This will be the funniest program. I'm trying to be cranky and you won't let me.
I won't let you.
They're fucking up my email. I haven't told you about this yet because I just found out about this.
No, who's they?
The email people. They sent me a goddamn, hold on. As a matter of fact, I'll just break from our
we need evidence.
Normal, tightly fucking formatted program, and I'll just go to where the fuck I forwarded it to Hotchkiss. I don't remember where it is now. Possibly here. Yeah. These people at GoDaddy again. I told you I didn't trust these people. These people have told me we're updating your email experience on June 24th. We're retiring Workspace, whatever the fuck that, I guess that's what I've got now, and moving your email to a new platform. It's going to be smooth and you don't have to do anything. If you currently use catch-alls in Workspace, Microsoft Office 365 doesn't support this functionality, but does have other options. Now, Hotchkiss hadn't told me what all those words mean yet. But anyway, basically, it's going to look different. It's going to change
maybe
my
better.
Email. I won't be able to figure out who it's from and who it's to and what it's about because it's going to be laid out differently, is what Hotchkiss is telling me.
However, the potential is there for it to be better, for you to actually enjoy the new layout.
Why? Oh, goddamn. That's like, did you enjoy your recent root canal? No, I had to fucking undergo it, but there was no enjoyment to it. Email is not something you enjoy. It's something that you drag yourself in front of and attempt to fucking answer and or deal with when there's no other choice in your life. And I've only ever had one, and it only looked just the one way. And at one point here, just shortly ago, when, as you'll recall, these email people fucked me up and I didn't get any emails for a day or whatever. And Hotchkiss had to call them, very upset about that. I've never seen him dial a phone so fast. And he dials that phone with that sixth finger on his left hand, too. Just beep, beep, beep. And when it first came up, it was laid out completely different. I couldn't get it. It didn't register with my eyes. As I said, I've only had the one kind of email. I know it. I understand it. I don't often use it because of the time limitations of having to read all that shit and type. So everybody that emails me knows that I'm bad on emails. But now this is going to look completely different and make this torturous process even more unintelligible and stroke-provoking. I despise change. When you learn how something works, why do they keep jacking around with it? I loathe that.
Oh,
I asked you a question.
Was that a question?
Yes. It had a question mark at the end of it, so what do you think it was? A declarative statement?
Yeah, I loathe that. That's a declarative statement.
No, the part I asked you before, I said I loathe that. I said, why do they have to keep fucking with everything?
First of all, I don't know why they email you. That's the first mistake.
Well, because it's on the automatic, the email thing. And then send it's their email, it's do not reply. You can't even send them a strongly worded response saying don't fuck with my shit. Because in their address, they've already said do not reply. So they just get to fucking tell you shit that's gonna happen for shit you're paying for. And not only can you not do anything about it, you can't even reply to them.
Well, let's say a company like GoDaddy, who may not be the greatest. If you were on there and they're going to change their email, there's only so many things you can do, but maybe they'll give you access to the old version while the new version is still being introduced.
Oh, you think they'll be so kind?
Yeah, sometimes they will, because they haven't figured out all the kinks yet in their new system.
Oh, okay, now there's going to be kinks, and not in a good way.
But maybe you think about going somewhere other than GoDaddy and making sure that company has email the way you want to see it.
Well, then they'll have all my goddamn emails over there. Who knows what? They might turn state's evidence and report me to the government if I piss them off. See, now they've got fucking evidence over me.
Evidence of what?
I don't know.
What are you putting in emails?
Evidence.
What are you putting in these emails?
Well, you never know. For heaven's sake, the government now can put the tracker chips in the vaccinations and everything. We hear that all the time from all of the lunatic Republicans. So certainly they've got my emails at GoDaddy. I don't like changing around this electronic shit.
When was the last bit of technological progress you actually did like? Was there ever something where like the new version of something came out and you're like, oh, you know what? This is pretty cool.
Oh, they were on an incredible run on home video equipment in the late 80s and early 90s with amazing stuff. You could actually do almost what a small television station could do right in the privacy of your own home on tape. And then all of a sudden VCRs turned to shit and they started selling them for a fucking $100. It was like goddamn, McDonald's hamburgers. And then, all the fun went out of it because now it's all fictitious and doesn't exist on a cassette tape in your hands. But I love the new VCRs. I've got multiple ones every year.
So would you say it's the point where technology became less centered around physical units and more, it's in the cloud, it's on the server, there's nothing for you to physically hold after you create it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all fictitious. I don't like that. That's why I have every piece of paper I've ever read for the last 30 years and can prove all these things. Whereas everybody else just willy-nilly threw their shit away. And now they have to make shit up. Anyway. As a matter of fact, speaking of the email thing, I have an email here. I know this is your show. And every week you control the direction. You control the horizontal and vertical. You control what the people see and hear. You are the control voice. But I got an email, and I'm apparently not going to have many more of these after they fuck up my email. And I'm not going to be able to, because I do go through and try to see if anybody I know personally has emailed me. And a lot of time, and I'll read those and then usually I'll say, I need to give this guy a well thought out, lengthy answer, or whatever, just visit with them. And so then I say, I'll do that at a time when I have time to do that. And then I never do that. Others, I don't read at all. But when I do read emails, people get their feelings hurt because they're like, well, he must have read mine then if he read that one. No, actually, sometimes it's just the thought-provoking subject line, or sometimes it's a subject line that has something to do with something that we've recently talked about, and I'm just wanting to update it on the program, whatever, but I don't see everything. So don't take it personally, people. But I did get one, and I won't reveal the subject line because that way people will know what got my attention. But this is from Lauren. And she says, "Hi, Jim. My partner absolutely loves you. He's met you and has a picture with you and him framed on his desk at home. Ha ha." I don't know why she laughs at that. Apparently, we're doing something comedic. But anyway, he listens to you all the time. I've fallen asleep listening to you loads. I think she means a lot of times, but it sounds like she's calling both me and him loads.
I don't know. Maybe the Miro School of English.
But anyway, no, we're kidding, Lauren, as we'll find out. He's really sick in the hospital at the moment, and the doctors aren't sure what's wrong with him. It's a horrible time for him as nobody can go in to visit him due to COVID, and it's his birthday on May 1st. We're hoping he'll be home by then, but it's not looking good. So I was just wondering if you could do a shout out or anything for him. His name's Ricky Gill. I don't have much money, but I could try to find some if there's a cost for this. I'm not sure how all this works. Thank you so much for reading. Kindest regards and stay safe, Lauren. Well, Lauren, we're not sure how all this works either, but there's not a charge for it. It's just if we stumble upon it. But hello, Ricky, and get out of the fucking hospital and go back home and see Lauren.
What a great name for a regional babyface in the early 80s. Ricky Gill.
Ricky Gill. No, now Dwayne Gill's going to fucking call Stephen P. New and sue for some type of infringement or impingement or whatever. All right, anyway, this is your show. I just wanted to get that in. I'm a blank slate this weekend. 'Cause I had another weekend of figures. Another weekend of figure packing. In the, what has it been? We just did a fucking show. We just did the experience. That was 72 hours ago, right?
Correct.
Yeah. In 72 hours, counting the short amount of time that I did sleep, I packed up another 275 signed action figures in 132 or 135 or whatever the fuck 2-packs. And they are headed as the people, they will have shipped by the time the people hear this. They will already be winging their way, and it's looking good. Even though Bree's on vacation this week, I've changed my shipping days to accommodate their the other personnel. But it's looking good that I can probably get all of the 2-packs, domestically at least, shipped out by this weekend, and then we're starting those single packs and mixed orders. Boy, howdy. Folks, another 2 or 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I don't fucking know. But it won't be as long as it's been. That was Mama Cornette's favorite saying. And more people are now happy than unhappy because I've crossed the halfway point in shipping orders. I don't know. I'm not trying to make you laugh again. I'm just now my back hurts. Stacy had the back surgery. My back hurts from lugging his shit in and out of the post office now. I may have to be put up on the rack as well. Then Harley would be fetching and carrying for the both of us. And I don't think she, honestly, her cooking is not nearly as good as ours. When it's her night to fix dinner, and she has a kind of a bland palate also. But This is your show.
Have you thought about play sets or action vehicles?
We have talked about that also. We may go with some kind of Jim Cornette's standing in front of famous wrestlers' cars line, because all of my cars have been so unimpressive. But the people love the picture of me at Crockett's office standing in front of Magnum's Porsche. That was great. So maybe I should just go around and have different wrestlers' cars, and it could have the Jim Cornette host wrestler car playset.
See, I think if it's a bigger product, a bigger item, then we could sell it for a bigger price. I think we should go right to creepy vans. The various vans throughout wrestling in the 80s. Dennis Condrey's, Ric Flair and Blackjack Mulligan's. The fabulous ones.
Well, and actually, but now here's the thing. This may be a little known trivia fact. It may be a little known trivial fact for most people. But the famous Fabulous Ones van was also the famous Dennis Condrey van.
Wow. Very interesting. What a crossover.
Because every time we took a trip in that fucking van in Louisiana when it rained, we were cussing Stan Lane because he's the one that sold it to Dennis when we were all in Tennessee before we left. And Dennis thought, well, it'd be good to have a van on the road. And there's me and Buddy Landell and Bob Eaton and Carl Fergie trying to sleep on an overnight drive. It lined along the outer walls of the back of the van because the fucking vent on the top leaked in the rain. It would rain in the middle of the van. And we were stranded and broke down at least 3 times on the side of the road in that thing. So we didn't have nearly as much fun in it as Stan Lane had.
Who was the first wrestler, either as a fan or in the business, that you remember them just pulling up and you're like, holy cow, look at what this guy's driving. This is amazing.
Oh, God. Well, you know what? At first, until we started actually parking in the back at the Louisville Gardens, when I started, we got access because I was going in the back door. I was doing the photography. My mom was helping with the merchandise and everything. We always parked across the street and came in the front door. I know a bunch of the fans used to go around back and stand around in the alley, but my mom's like, we don't want to go around standing in the alley, right? So I didn't start seeing the cars that the guys were driving until, I started going in the back and parking in the same area. And then it was funny because I looked back on it at the time and I realized what was going on. But some of the big names that you'd read about in the magazines would come in some of the shittiest automobiles, while all of the guys that were based in Tennessee, Eddie Marlin, Jerry Lawler, Bill Dundee, Jerry Jarrett, Thomas Marlin, all the people that were in the office or figured in, they all had beautiful cars, a Lincoln or a Cadillac or whatever the fuck. And I realized later on is because the names that traveled territory to territory, they weren't in their home area and figured in and knew that, they weren't going to get their fucking notice. So they weren't part of the office. So they were getting fucking 300,000 miles out of these things that they would just take on the road and beat the shit out of. Whereas all the people I just mentioned that were either here for life or figured into the office or whatever, and all the trips are 200 miles into Tennessee territory, just one every day. They had these nice cars and et cetera. Anyway, they were also making a lot more money than the big stars when they came into Memphis.
Who had the fanciest car in Mid-South in 84?
Oh, God. Magnum back then, I think, still had a sports car of some description. See, once again, I didn't see most of the fucking baby faces driving because we avoided each other that much. I could tell Buddy Landell had it was a 2-door Cadillac, and it was white interior, and he loved that car, but it was a shits for being on the road because it was a 2-door and you have 2 big guys trying to get in the back seat, right? But he loved the car. But one day I get out of the back seat to, flip recline the seat up, the front seat up, and I'm getting out of this one door. And as I'm trying to get out, the fucking trim, his gold trim on the back of the seat comes out with me. It hangs on a button or something. I tear the whole thing off the back of the seat. Buddy goes, oh my God, Jimmy, what the fuck? And I look and it's fucking plastic. It's not some high polished metal gold trim. Right? It's fucking plastic. I said, buddy, it's plastic. He says, my fucking Cadillac. I said, well, it's a plastic Cadillac. Look at it. I said, what the fuck? This is 15 cents worth of material. It was like I had fucking, firebombed his car. But all the heels, and actually, I think Magnum had a sports car then because they did a video with him or something. He might have borrowed it. In Mid-South, Watts had the Rolls Royce. We've told that story that he drove to the last Stampede in Tulsa when JR threw his body over the fucking hood of the Rolls Royce as I was running by because people were throwing the bottles in the cans. But everybody else had a hunk of shit car because those trips were ridiculous even by wrestling standards, and the roads in the state of Louisiana and a lot of them in Arkansas were fucking brutal. And so everybody pretty much, they had something big enough, and I was the outlier there because I had that fucking Datsun Maxima. It got like 40 miles a fucking gallon, and me and Bobby and Dennis were okay. The fourth person may have been a little bit of a stretch. But your car was getting beat up every day. I mean, and if you changed your oil every 5,000 miles, you were getting an oil change. Even if you rotated with your partner and or a friend, you were getting an oil change every 2 weeks. So it was just, it wasn't until I got to Crockett and the Carolinas and the guys were making stupid money. And they were all buying those fancy cars. And then, the roads in the Carolinas back then were certainly better than Louisiana, but I didn't necessarily see the wisdom of spending that much money for a car you're going to put, a minimum of 50,000 miles a year on if you're sharing rides with other people. But it's your show.
Who had the fanciest car in Crockett that actually drove it to all the shows?
Well, again, that's not an applicable question because Magnum had that Porsche. He didn't drive it to goddamn. Well, he probably did drive it to Norfolk because that's where his family lived, his mom and dad. But he didn't drive it to Charleston, South Carolina most of the time. It was for shorter trips. That's why he was coming back from Greenville in that car. And I mean, all the other guys, they got. Flair had, what was it? That BMW. And that was a fucking rib. Because once again, I've always been cautious with a dollar, as they used to say. So the cars I had in my lifetime, by the time 1989 rolled around, I had a 73 Firebird, but I got it used. That was my first car. And some other guy had it new for his first car because, I mean, it was beat to shit. When you would hit a pothole, the air conditioning would go off. And then you'd have to find a pothole, fucking hit to turn it back on. And then I had that until I got into business. And I got that little Mercury LN7. It was great on gas mileage. And I had the should have been fatal wreck. One car wreck in the Holly Springs National Forest after I'd had it for 6 weeks, and that was totaled. And then I got the Datsun Maxima that I ended up having through the rest of Tennessee, Georgia, and all of Louisiana and into Dallas.
Wait, hold on. You totaled a car in the park?
The Holly Springs National Forest, not the park. I wasn't driving through the park. I was in the... I was coming back from Tupelo, Mississippi, when I first got into business. And the reason why I'd got that car is because I didn't really have credit to buy a car because a lot of the Cornette photography and ring announcing business was done in cash and safe and A, right? So Jerry Jarrett, who at the time had an interest in a car lot, he said, all right, I'll sign for you and I'm going to be employing you. So I got that car, and then I'm coming back from Tupelo, and I believe I may have told this story before when I said that was the night they didn't even have me on the pay sheet, so the mark they sold the town to wouldn't pay me.
That's right.
But I'm going through the Holly Springs National Forest on the way back to Memphis and hit the slick spot in the rain and into the ditch. That was the end of that car. And then, as I said, I had the Datsun. And then, finally, we go to Charlotte in 85. I'm making all that money. I'd been renting these cars when we would go to, we'd fly places, and they were big on the Hertz rental squad. at the time was it was a Thunderbird, but it was one of those turbos. They had turbo Cougars and turbo T-Birds, and they were cool cars and blah, blah, blah. $18,000. The most that I had spent for an automobile in my life at that point in time. But for what the fuck, right? So I got that, and I had that for 6 years under those conditions. I think it was ended up 200,000 miles or whatever, even when we'd started flying a lot with Crockett's plane and everything. And then I had the famous Ford Taurus that I drove and did angles with in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, including Bobby Fulton bashing the back window of it out with a lead pipe while me and Stan Lane and Tom Pritchard were in the front seat. And I got that in 1990 here in Louisville at a Ford place in Shelbyville for $12,000 cash. And I had that for 270-something thousand miles. And then that's the one that I ended up with in Connecticut when I got the Toyota Camry from a car dealership owned by Tony Rumble's cousin for like $13,000 brand new. And I had that all the way until we ended up fucking raffling that son of a bitch off at an OVW show in like the mid 2000s. And made like $300 on it because it had 300,000 miles on it, and no rear view mirror on one side. Rico Constantino had taken a stuntman bump in the parking lot just for fun and taken the mirror off, and I'd bashed it with that's the one. No, my Taurus. Yeah, my Taurus was the one that I bashed in Atlantic City with the ball bat when they fenced me in after they broke my window on Raw. But anyway, the point of where were we going with this? I have not had a lot of money and automobiles over the course of my and Black Beauty, brand new Ford Expedition with everything on it. When I got it, I now have 297,000 miles on it.
You've never craved like a fancy car?
No. Why? I don't want to go anywhere.
Well,
I could take $50,000 for a sports car and put it in the fucking house. I'll be in the house a lot more than I'll be in the car.
Well, let's get some questions here on this show this weekend.
That's just plain sense, Matthew.
Well, we've got questions here that have been sent.
I got answers.
Several questions have come in, Jim.
All right.
About Ryback. Have you been following the latest exploits of Ryback on Twitter?
I know that he asked people what he should do with his career and probably got answers that he was not searching for.
Apparently on Twitter, Ryback posted, "What promotion would you like to see me return to in 2021? Hashtag hungry. Hashtag feed me more. Hashtag Ryback." And the options were AEW, NXT, Impact, or retire. Would you like to guess what came in fourth place?
Impact.
You are correct with only 7% of the vote. Doesn't seem like a lot of people want to see Ryback in Impact.
Does not.
That's what I said.
I'm agreeing with you. Have you never seen Carson and McMahon?
I've seen Carson and McMahon.
Well, I'm doing that.
Who do you think came in third?
Third would have been, what was the other choice besides AEW?
NXT or retire?
NXT came in third.
You are correct. With 15% of the vote, NXT comes in second. Doesn't seem like anyone wants to see Ryback in NXT.
Does not.
Who do you think came in first runner-up?
AEW.
That is correct. AEW, of course, right now, a lot of people talking about AEW. 30% of the vote. 30% of the people who voted, and as of this point that this image was sent to me, 3,722 votes cast, 30% want to see Ryback in AEW. Jim, coming in first place with a whopping 40...
Wait a minute, do you want me to guess?
Well, there's only one other option.
Well, that's why I was hoping I'd get a clean sweep, but go ahead.
With 48% of the vote, retire. One Ryback's poll that he put out himself.
Bill Dundee wrote a book one time. Said the title of it was, "If you don't want the answer, don't ask the question." Apparently, a whopping 4.8 out of 10 people would rather see Ryback, in the words of Ole Anderson, not do this anymore. And I'm surprised it actually didn't go across the end of the majority, but that maybe a lot of these people that voted had to be his immediate family, because it's on his Twitter. But even he could barely cross the threshold of halfway on his own Twitter of people wanting him to not do this anymore.
Well, maybe he's a good booker. Maybe he has set up things perfectly for round 2. Would you like to see Ryback in WWE or retire? Because that was not an option.
Well, but here's another thing. I think that WWE might win that poll, because probably the only thing worse than retiring is having to go back to the place that ran you off to begin with, and the fans would probably say, yeah, and they'll really browbeat him into powder this time. So, yeah, if we really don't like Ryback, we want to see him go back there and get fucked with some more.
You know, you hear about how hard it is, just that life on the road, going from one place to another and having to train and eat well and all these things. Everyone complains about it. Are there guys that complain about it and then after a year or two they miss being in that lifestyle? They miss being that level of celebrity, that being on TV, whatever it may be. Are there a lot of guys that leave and then go, gosh, I kind of miss being there?
Well, I mean, yes. For one thing, whoever leaves anymore on purpose, whoever left to begin with on purpose, it's like, you know, a lot of guys who were successful would slow their schedule down and would do pick and choose shots, do what they wanted. If they were sad, or if they had an ownership in an office, or they were just winding things down. Other guys that didn't have those options would just be wound down against their will. But even the guys that did it on purpose never really made a clean break and got away. I mean, you know, it's your life, so you miss certain aspects of it. And, you know, I guess for some guys, it's missing being on TV or being a star. For some people, it's just missing being around the boys in the locker room. Although, you know, that atmosphere has changed to the point where all the old timers from my generation don't really get as much enjoyment about being in the locker room anymore as out talking to the fans. They make more sense. But it's always been that but very few people just actually said, yep, I'm done. Jack Briscoe, and that was the fucking snow and the fact that he had the body shop and he'd, you know, been a huge money earner for a long time. CM Punk, he didn't have a body shop and there wasn't any snow involved. There was a snow job involved, and he just said, you know, fuck it. But well, think about it. Let me ask you a question. Since this is your show, who else besides Jack Briscoe, CM Punk, who am I leaving out? Just decided, well, that's it, I'm done, and you never saw him or heard from him in the wrestling realm, pro wrestling again.
So not related to an injury.
Choosing to, not like, no, we're not going to fucking let you wrestle or you're physically not able to anymore. That doesn't really count.
Who voluntarily? So the anti-Ric Flair list, really?
Oh, quit now.
No, I'm kidding.
Even Bruno came back a couple of times when he had decided not to. And then...
But if you listen to Bruno, they begged him. They said, Bruno, please, we need you. We can't survive without Bruno. We need more Bruno.
No, I was around for a couple of the people that begged him. WCW, for him to be a referee, he was getting a good amount of begging. But that's what I'm saying is, and then still made appearances. Jack Briscoe, I think what was it, years and years, and then he went to the Cauliflower Alley Club.
Stan Lane.
No, Stan's still done appearances and stuff. He, and
appearances or pulled themselves out of the ring and out of actively being involved?
Hold on. He did the Midnight Express reunion matches after he decided I'm done 10 or 12 years earlier. And then he did the last one several years ago just because his wife had never got to see him wrestle in person. So he did come back and do some things. And I'm sure we're not thinking of somebody. I mean, Eddie Mansfield did his own shit. Nobody else wanted him around. But now somebody's, trying to do shoot interviews with the Weasel. He wanted to be somebody. That was the whole issue to begin with. And now he still wants to be somebody. So you can't count him because he was runoff for the most part. Because anybody that's been in the business, unless you had a grudge against it, or like with Briscoe, it was just, he was one of those plain spoken Oklahoma guys. He's not going to do this anymore. He's done. It's somebody else's time. He didn't hate it. He just didn't want to do it anymore. And he didn't feel like he should be, coming back around, being some hanger on or whatever. It was a noble issue with that. So, for all the guys who loved the business all those years, I mean, and once again, now, the guys of my era don't feel that way now. They can't go in a locker room. They don't understand what the fuck is going on for the most part, unless they're still trying to get a job. I'm talking about for enjoyment. Nobody from my generation, I don't think, would go in a locker room today for the enjoyment of hanging out with the boys. And I don't know, unless you now really just want a job or need a job. Maybe, some of these guys are just going to say, but nobody really stays away. Any more? Any ideas? Maybe somebody else.
A crystal ball into CM Punk's future, possibly here.
Well, he could maybe be more like Jack Briscoe.
So I can think of guys who voluntarily left the ring but stayed involved with wrestling. Like Gorilla Monsoon took himself out of the ring before he had to, but he was the Office.
Well, yeah.
And he'd rather do that.
Well, and also, to be honest, I mean, at Gorilla's size, and he had diabetes, so it probably wasn't good for him to be on the road bumping and doing stuff. He probably didn't take himself out of the ring soon enough with some of the mid-70s stuff I've seen. But he was one of the highest paid guys in the wrestling business because he was in the Office. But I'm talking about just leave wrestling and don't come back and don't do returns and don't do conventions and, whatever. Heyman would have been close when, except that he came back for Vince. Because you didn't see him in any wrestling context for a while there. I thought he might have kicked the fucking monkey off his back, but no. He just likes expensive monkeys.
I guess so. I'm trying to think of any other examples. It's a hard question.
Because we might be not thinking of some, dipshit that was around for a year or two and then you never saw him again. But that defeats the purpose of, yes, there can always be a flash in the pan, but anybody that was ever established or really enjoyed it, it was their life. It was what they wanted to do to begin with. They enjoyed at least most of the things about it, or they wouldn't have been doing it. So they didn't want to, leave it, even when they couldn't wrestle anymore. And if they're, and see, that was the thing for at some points it was looked down on when when an old timer would come to the shows, but a lot of the boys got a kick out of it. It's just sometimes the Office or snooty people or whatever would be like, oh, there's so-and-so again. But Sputnik Monroe was a security guard in Texas, but came to the matches a couple times in Houston and once, some other town besides Houston. Could it have been Beaumont? I don't know. But anyway, all the boys loved to hear Sputnik Monroe. But then I've heard tales of old timers like that showing up at the WWE shows and the security kicking them out. But it was the thing where guys just wanted to come and hang out with the boys for a while. Remember, I said Don Fargo came and visited us in Amarillo. And that was a big kick for all the guys that had worked anywhere, because everybody knew who Don Fargo was. And, he wasn't looking to get booked. He rode in on his fucking Harley. Because hanging out with the boys in the 80s was the same as hanging out with the boys in the 50s. Hanging out with the boys in the 20s is not the same as hanging out with the boys in the 80s.
Again, everyone's had limited returns. Another name was Nikita Koloff, I just thought of.
Yes. But he's
made appearances.
He's made appearances and done stuff.
He's on Cameo. Yeah.
I wonder would Jack Briscoe have done Cameo?
Jerry Briscoe does it.
I'm kidding. That was a joke. Obviously, it didn't fucking. Hold on here. Let me pipe my own in. There we go. Yeah. It was funny, wasn't it? No, that's the wrong one.
Yeah, that's the right one.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, Jim, if Ryback can't get into AEW or NXT or Impact, and a lot of people want to see him retire, it doesn't mean that Ryback can't create some photos of himself in various famous wrestling rings around the country and send them to his own skylight frame.
Create photos of himself. Well, if you'd like to have something nothing like that segue, I can tell you that if you have friends or family or loved ones that you're not in the vicinity of, that are far away, you can stay in touch and close together by going through the fine folks at Skylight Frames. You're not able to visit your mother or your father or your grandparents or your grandchildren. Some of our elderly, sick and shut-in fans may have grandkids out there, some even that you admit and recognize. Folks, if you've got any kind of family, or dogs, pets, cats, things like that, the Skylight Frame is a miracle product. It's a touchscreen photo frame that you can email pictures to, and they appear in this frame in seconds. So if your mother is somewhere else when you've got the kids and you want to send kids pictures to your mother, don't mail them. Just put them into the Skylight Frame. You send her the Skylight Frame, she sets it up, and then anybody can send pictures that has the appropriate information to this Skylight Frame. And we have mentioned and don't need to go any farther into the fact that this is ripe for candid photography, this setup. I can't believe that people are not doing this all over the place. Anyway, it's got a gorgeous 10-inch touchscreen. You can swipe through the pictures. It holds multiple, just all kinds of pictures. You can preload it if you want to and send it to someone, or you can send them the frame and then start surprising them with pictures from afar, regardless of what. Skylight Frames, your friends, your family, your cherished places, your favored pets. It's all of and candid photography. And right now you can get $10 off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to Skylight, that's SkylightFrame, skylightframe.com, and enter the code DRIVE, D-R-I-V-E. Sounds like a spelling bee. Skylightframe.com, enter the code DRIVE, get $10 off your purchase of a Skylight Frame, and then start filling those things up with pictures of your loved ones or ones that you would like to love.
Well, Jim, speaking of ones that you would like to love, our next question sent on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from Mr. Backyard Wrestling number 1.
From what?
I guess there's a number 2. Mr. Backyard Wrestling number 1.
Okay, alrighty then.
Here's a list made by Cultaholic regarding the 10 best comedy wrestlers ever. I'd like to get Jim's thoughts on this.
10 best comedy wrestlers ever.
Before we even go into this, you have any thoughts? Who would you say, if you had to dive into that world of comedy wrestling, who would you say is the premier guy, the number one comedy wrestler of all time?
I don't even know why that people think there is a genre called comedy wrestling. If you occasionally would have guys in the wrestling business with gimmicks that lent themselves to mirth making and, hilariousness, but I've never heard it ranked like there was somehow a subgenre of wrestling that like the death matches and the hardcore matches and the scientific matches and the comedy matches. Is there a separate roster for these type of things?
These appear to be wrestlers on the main roster for WWE, at least in the past, and major names, some with AEW, some of international renown. And the criteria, I guess, just seems to be someone who's funny in the ring.
All right. Well, let's hear.
You haven't made any
example.
Well, you haven't said anything about who you think would be number one.
Because well, I mean, this is obviously a more modern day list, right? You said of all time a minute ago, I think. So I started thinking through history.
Yes, Brute Bernard is not on this list.
Yeah, okay, well, there you go. Don't see it when he's got the fucking 2x4. Well, I mean, all those fucking jackoffs are funny to me these days. Not funny, actually, but they're trying to be funny. Who'd be the funniest? Would it be Pockets? Or,
Jim, at number 10, Orange Cassidy.
Okay, he's only the 10th funny, because actually he's not funny at all, but he's trying to be. So is this list then more people that are trying to be funny than are funny?
Well, number 9 on the list, Hurricane Helms.
I mean, I admit I was not a regular viewer of the WWF programming or Was he there during the F or the E?
I think maybe on the barrier.
Maybe on the if a plane crashes on the border between the United States and Canada, where do they bury the survivors? I know, yeah. I got somebody at that with the post office the other day. But I always thought he was a good worker. I guess the fucking skits they did with the hurricane gimmick, he probably did some funny stuff, but I wouldn't call him a comedy guy. I think Shane's pretty decent talent.
Number 8, once again, the top 10 best comedy wrestlers ever, Heath Slater.
Okay, we praised his promo that he came out and did after they fired him, right?
Yeah, he came out there and did the promo of his career against Drew McIntyre.
Yeah, after they fired him. And that's honestly, I don't know that I've seen a Heath Slater match. Was he on anything when we were watching it?
He's done some silly stuff in the past, but I don't know how much of it, if any of it, we would have seen.
He didn't seem like a comedy guy like our little dog Pockets when we saw him speak, but who knows what's out there. That's why I hate to say anything good about anybody anymore. Then somebody shows me a picture of them shoving an umbrella up their ass and opening it up and floating over the fucking ring.
Number 7 on the list, William Regal.
Oh, for heaven's sake. Now they're conflating entertaining and amusing in a wrestling context with being a comedy wrestler. William Regal is one of the best technicians in the business and can do it the proper way. And his facial expressions and the way that when he's a pompous English British heel, that he gets the piss taken, or when he's, out wrestling someone with his World of Sport confusing style or whatever, he's entertaining. But would you ever consider William Regal a comedy wrestler?
He was entertaining and funny in moments, but he was a serious wrestler.
Yes.
And he wasn't being over the top silly. It was about his reactions to things, really.
Yes, which is part of wrestling. The way you react to things. And if it's different from everybody else, people notice.
Number 6 on the list.
Oh boy.
Grado.
I think he belongs on the list because I met the guy on my first trip over to the UK. I didn't do wrestling events on that trip. It was just my shows, but he was there at some of the promotional things that we did. He was a nice guy. And was he at another show I was at somewhere? The point is, he's a very nice guy, but all I ever heard in the, not critiques, but the summaries of his matches, the reports of his matches, was that it was, it was a hoot for that crowd at that time, and he was coming out to Madonna music and doing a whole big over the top deal, and so he probably fits there, and he was over with it for, as those things go, for a couple years until those things go, because those things always go like that. I don't have anything bad to say about him because I've never seen any of those matches.
Wasn't he big in the plans when they tried to revive World of Sport, although it was a completely different style of wrestling than World of Sport?
It's like the revival of Kung Fu. When the title's the same and everything else completely different. They revived World of Sport without reviving World of Sport. Yes, and I guess wasn't he doing, for a while there when he was hot, he was doing TNA, I guess, too, for a while. And I didn't see any of that either, obviously. And I'm not knocking a guy because I haven't seen it, but I'm assuming, based on meeting him and seeing him and just hearing the descriptions of his exploits, that it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek type of deal.
Number 5 on this list. I've seen this guy pictured. I've never actually said his name out loud, so I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Kikutaru.
Oh, good Lord.
Kikutaro.
Is that the guy in the pig face, the pig mask?
I believe so, yes.
He asked me for my autograph one time.
Really?
At a fan fest. And in gimmick. And I thought it was one of the fans. And then I said to somebody else there who knew more apparently than I did, I said, look at that guy in that fucking outfit. He said, oh, that's the fucking, he wrestles. What? It's a guy in I'm just envisioning him from having seen it in the past, but he's like a cross between a guy in a pig mask and is it like a kind of a Donald Duck outfit? And he wrestles, yeah, supposedly. And he is, I guess he's Japanese because he wrestles in Japan. But I don't know because I'm not sure how to determine the ethnicity of pigs.
Number 4 on the list, Les Kellet.
Well, obviously, Les Kellet was one of the World of Sport guys in the, 60s, 70s era that did the wild, cool escapes and moves and comedy spots. And yeah, I guess, as Adrian Street would say, touching people up the ass type of thing. I have not seen that much Les Kellet. I defer to you on this if you are indeed even up on Les Kellet.
I'm not terribly familiar with all of his work. I've seen clips and matches, but
I've seen a couple of things, but not enough to memorize. But again...
But for him to be in front of Kikutaru, I don't know.
Well, but no, I mean, it's the same thing as like people can point to Ricky Starr in the 50s. Oh, there's always been bullshit. Well, yes, there's always been bullshit. And the reason why some of the bullshit got over was because there wasn't constant bullshit. So, yes, Ricky Starr, and for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Ricky Starr had a ballet dancer gimmick in the 50s, and he was a babyface. But the thing is, and people also don't understand, Ricky Starr was a legit amateur shooter and could wrestle. And then when he did a cartwheel or a pirouette, especially if he did it to the fucking heel and made him look like an idiot and slapped him in the face with his foot and all that other stuff, it got over. If you had a guy doing a ballet dancer gimmick in every territory in the 50s, it would probably spell the end of the fucking wrestling business. Because this guy could go from one place to another and be totally unique and still be an athlete while doing these things. That was the attraction. And he got over huge after his run in America in England, doing the same shit. So there's always an exception to the rule. What most people don't understand is that the only reason the exception to the rule gets over is because it's the exception to the rule. If everybody then immediately is allowed to do that, then it becomes just gaga, commonplace, nobody gives a fuck. And usually the first guy doing that kind of thing is the best at it anyway, because since he's the first at doing it, it's just something that probably only he can do to begin with. But was Ricky Starr on that list?
He's not on this list, no.
Who are we talking about?
Les Kellet.
Les Kellet, same goddamn thing.
Number 4.
World of Sport. Everybody was fucking more serious, and then here comes Les Kellet or Cat Weasel. I'm popping all of the fucking mid-50s guys in the UK now. Cat Weasel.
I've seen a lot
was
of
another,
Cat Weasel.
but he was on TV 3 times a year, maybe. Maybe. Did they put him on TV?
Or he was on TV. He was on TV.
Okay, sometimes with more popular live acts that they didn't necessarily want to. This goes for UK, US, or anything else. You didn't necessarily say this guy doesn't make great television, but boy, he gets over in the live crowd. So you wouldn't feature him on television as much, but you'd book him in the house shows in a more prominent position because the people liked him live, but it was a little gaga. That's just for any number of people.
Well,
the Bear never wrestled on television either.
Number 3 on this list, Colt Cabana.
I heartily concur, because that was Colt's mission in life, was to be the world's funniest wrestler, even when something didn't call for fun. And you know, he, of course, now as I've referred to him sometimes as patient zero of the comedy craze, but now he'd be as serious as Carl Gotch compared to some of these jolly jokers. And also he's a grown adult man, over 6 feet tall and 200-something pounds with a good body, and he's a good worker. It's just that the personality that gets over for him is silliness. And I've just mentioned that sometimes, if that's an exception, it does get over. It wasn't what we wanted to present in Ring of Honor simply because there was so much silliness everywhere else. We wanted to be different. But yeah, Colt, he can talk. He can be serious when he wants to. He didn't, as I recall, do bad commentary at one point in time. But I know a lot of people think he's funny, but he's never been funny to me. His shit ain't funny. The funny shit that he does isn't funny. All of his serious shit that he does, I think, is pretty good. But he was always trying to be funny. It was never funny to me.
So it really must be painful to him to only be number 3 on the list.
Oh, he would have loved to be number 1 because that was he was trying to do stand-up comedy. That's the thing. He wasn't bad when he was serious. I think I mentioned one time, when we had Dave Taylor come to one of the Ring of Honor events in Atlanta, and it gave him a feature match where he and Colt could do World of Sport style, because Colt was good with World of Sport style. He'd spent a lot of time in England. But he couldn't do anything without that just happy grin face and the ha and the funniness and his name, or the not name, but pro wrestler on his, garage mechanic outfits fucking pocket there. He just, so it was a lost cause for trying to get him to be serious.
Number 2 on this list, Santino Marella.
Maybe we should have found number 1, because can you think of a bigger joke on a mainstream level? Because, I mean, he was actually on the big television, and everything he did was completely phony and fake and stupid and silly and to appeal to the mentality of a child, whether dressing up as his fake sister like Jethro Bodine in the Beverly Hillbillies, or a fucking snake sock on his arm being charmed by a fucking snake charmer and taken off on its own away from him, and the funny walk and from the time he got in the ring to the time he left, it was one big fucking joke, and it was meant to appeal to the level of a fucking 9-year-old.
Well, Jim, number 1 on the top.
So who
10,
can beat that?
R-Truth.
Oh, good Lord. I wouldn't have thought of him because I remember when he actually did wrestle, but you may be right, because now he's the biggest joke on the current big TV. The 24/7 belt, and obviously just playing the part of a complete fucking child-minded idiot who can't possibly believe any of the situations he's put in, and trying to cut those over-the-top promos, acting like it's ever going to get over. They've reduced him to the, basically a fucking joke. Can he ever wrestle a serious match in the WWE again? Could he ever be put in the ring again with normal people in normal matches and anybody not just giggle when they see him? No, this is not a rhetorical question.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they could.
After all of these covered up in fucking Old Spice displays and, beaten by fucking, didn't they do not only celebrities, but inanimate objects? I mean, is he just, would he have long ago asked for his release or, said, if you're trying to run me off, let me know and I will leave. I'll go elsewhere. Why are you making me a joke? I don't know what his motivation would be to do this shit.
Is there anyone you think missing from the list that needs to be there?
Well, every other fucking funny yahoo, except they try to be funny and they're not. Half of the AEW roster, most of the independents. Well, the humor on the independent level is, something's going to be shoved up my ass or, something's going to be fucking invisible or something, or we're all going to goddamn get in a conga line or whatever the case may be. I try not to have these people's names on the tip of my tongue. Maki Ito. She was attempting to be very funny and wasn't.
That was before the match.
But when she didn't attempt to be funny, it was. But she wasn't trying to be funny. And then again, it was so funny it was sad. I don't fucking know. Who was this? What august body of experts compiled this list?
Cultaholic.
Well, apparently somebody that compiled that list is an alcoholic.
All right, we're just throwing accusations out there.
Accusations abound here on the. Well, I'm not saying definitely for sure that whoever compiled that list is a drunken alcoholic bum lying in a gutter with a whiskey bottle in his back pocket, but a lot of people are saying it.
Jim, if one finds themselves laying in an alley drunk, a bum, they may want to check their credit score.
I've heard this. As a matter of fact, this has been reported on the news that most drunken bums laying broke and penniless in a gutter in an alley somewhere with a whiskey bottle in their back pocket have bad credit scores. And they could easily have avoided their current circumstances if they'd raised their credit score. Did you know, Brian, that the average American has 97 points they can add to their credit score, but they have no idea how to get them?
97?
97. How? The average Scoremaster user raises their credit score 61 points in 20 days or less. 61 points, less than 3 weeks. Scoremaster is the new credit science that super boosts your credit score. Forget raising your credit score a few points. That's lame. We don't want to do that. We're ramrodding that thing all the way up. Say your credit score was in the high 500s, mid 600s when you bought a new car. If you'd gone to Scoremaster first, raised the score 61 points, the average that the Scoremaster folks get, you could have saved $9,000 on your car loan. If you'd gone to Scoremaster before applying for the home loan and raised your score to 61 points, you could have saved almost $100,000 over the life of the loan. And if you own a business, you know how essential that great credit is, from getting a loan, funding projects, financing some equipment. Sooner or later, Hotchkiss is going to have that extra digit amputated. But if you go to Scoremaster first and see how super boosting your business credit score can save you a fortune, you'll be better off, because Scoremaster puts you in control of your finances, not those shady banks. As a matter of fact, I used to bank at Shady Acres First Bank and Trust, and goddamn it, they cut all the fucking trees down. The sunlight killed the whole thing. Anyway, enroll in minutes. I don't know where that was going. See how many plus points Scoremaster can add to your credit score. Just go to scoremaster.com scoremaster.com/JCE, scoremaster.com/JCE, and super boost your credit score. Brian, would you like your credit score to be ramrodded higher?
Yes.
Well, then good. I'll do the ramming, you do the rodding.
What?
Let's make lots of money. You've got the ram, I've got the rod. Let's make lots of money.
Well, Jim, speaking of making lots of money, A&E and WWE have gotten together and they put out a couple of new series, and the newest episode, the first episode, just debuted. The Steve Austin biography. I know you had a chance to see it.
I loved it. It's not really, it's a biography of his wrestling career, because 5 minutes into the show, he's discovered Houston wrestling, and the last 18 years of his life, he's been making movies and hosting TV shows. I think, maybe 7 or 8 minutes at the end, maybe. But obviously they're going for the wrestling audience, and it was cool. It was cool not only to hear him talk about himself, and some of the other people they had on. God bless the Artful Dodger. He wouldn't come up off the ringmaster being the shits, would he?
No.
It was like his quote was like, "Well, the ringmaster was meant to be the best wrestler, the master of the ring, the most talented and the hardest worker, and that always was Steve Austin to me." Yeah, it was like, or Christian Cage.
That's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. Outwork everyone.
We had just been talking about that on the program a couple of weeks ago, one of these programs that we did, where we talked about the Vince's idea behind the ringmaster was that everybody had told him, because he'd never seen Steve before. So everybody had told him what a great worker Steve was, and that he wasn't flashy, but he was a great talent, and somehow that's all that Vince could fixate on, was that they said how great he was in the ring, but then he didn't see a personality in Steve because he just met him the once. And of course, and Steve was on his best behavior, meeting Vince or whatever. But, and then finally, one of the great lines that I think it may have been Bruce's also, or it may have been Jim Ross, more applicable, was that finally when Vince had lost interest in the ringmaster idea and Steve kind of in general, DiBiase had left. And that's when Vince said, and Austin had all these ideas. I just let him do whatever he wants. Thank goodness. But anyway, but back to the biography special. They had a lot of good footage. They did a real good job. It was very well done. And I think they're obviously trying to appeal to the wrestling audience and the people that they have picked. Do you have the list? I can't remember the list. I know Piper's next week of all of the biographies they're going to do, but they're classic names that still resonate with people, that the modern fans obviously know, but that people that actually haven't watched wrestling in a long time will know instantly. And that's the problem we got. Just the footage that was shown, just the clips of Austin and Rock and Austin and Foley and Austin and Triple H and Austin and whoever. The intensity in these guys, the way the people were going berserk, the look in Austin's eyes, the badass way that he came to the ring, you believed that guy. And you're going to find out there's going to be a fucking common thread. You believed in Roddy Piper because he believed in himself. Like Bill Dundee said in Memphis Heat, the documentary one time, hell, the people believed it because we believed it. Steve Austin believed it. Roddy Piper believed it, so the people believed in them. And that's the case in any era in the wrestling business except today. And that's why somebody just tweeted a clip of a Worldwide Wrestling opening. I think we shot in, oh, goddamn, it may have been Charlotte, but wherever it was sold out, it was in the 80s. Sold out, had a riot. But the people are going berserk for the Rock and Roll Express. The cops are trying to drag the Rock and Roll Express through the crowd of people on the floor to get to the ring, and the girls trying to hug them and kiss them are pulling the cops off their feet, trying to get to the Rock and Roll Express. And you saw the same thing in the Austin program in the highlights, where even though they had more security and the wider entrance by, 10 years later, the people are still trying to touch him and pat him on the back. And it happened in the 70s, as we'll probably see if, depending on what footage they use of Piper. When he was a babyface in Portland, it was the same way. When he was a heel in the Carolinas, they were trying to get their hands on him for a different reason. But in the 70s, there were baby faces in the territories that the people couldn't get enough of, that were super over, that the people went ballistic every time they saw their face. Bruno in the Northeast, Dusty in Florida. You go back to the 60s, the 50s, there was always Rocca. There was always a baby face in any era and in most territories that people went berserk over. The only time there wasn't was when a territory was on its ass. It wasn't hot anymore, maybe about to go out of business. But this was the ultimate national example of it. Austin was fucking over like God. And we got used to it, seeing it, experience it, being around it. But now 20 years later, you look at that and you go, not only is there none of that intensity and I'm not talking about the COVID era where there is no crowd. Go back a year and a half. Who was getting a fucking Austin reaction or anything close to it? Anywhere, for anybody. Maybe 300 people in a fucking barn somewhere were going crazy over Johnny Depp shit. But not only that, but the intensity in the ring of the way these guys looked when they were up at each other's faces. Yeah, they showed a lot of Stone Cold Stunners on the Biography program, but they showed more Austin's intensity in McMahon's face and The Rock's face, the arguments, the pull-aparts, the shoving Mike Tyson, the emotional parts, the parts that people bought into. You don't see anybody with that intensity. And you saw why. Everybody said maybe to his detriment in his personal life, or as just Steve Austin had the passion and was dedicated to it, where he didn't have a relationship with his daughters, which they mentioned. And you're going to hear the same thing in Roddy Piper's program, I guarantee you, in that people are going to say, the same thing Steve Austin said when they asked him the question, what's the difference between Stone Cold Steve Austin and Steve Austin the person? And he starts saying something. He said, I really don't know if there is a difference. I don't know what the difference is. Piper was Piper. And as I said, I don't remember the entire list, but you're probably going to find that almost everybody that they do a documentary of fit that description to some level, except maybe Mick Foley. Aren't they doing Mick, or have they already done Mick? They're going to do Mick.
I have at least a partial list here. Stone Cold Steve Austin, Macho Man Randy Savage.
Oh my God. Okay, there you go.
Rowdy Roddy Piper.
Uh-huh.
Booker T. Shawn Michaels. Bret Hart.
Yeah.
Mick Foley. And Ultimate Warrior.
Well, and
I could already see that one. And then he left and gave speeches, but we can't find any footage of this somehow.
Yes. Ultimate Warrior, as we mentioned, was exactly who he was. Not saying that was a good thing. The outlier there, and Booker T, he could turn it on and off, but at the same time, Booker T came from the era when you had to be intense and convince people you were who you were, even if they knew about wrestling, they didn't know about you. But Mick is probably the only one of those guys. He had tremendous determination and passion and the whole 9 yards, but he's the only person on that list who probably, as a person, as a human being, was completely diametrically opposed to who he became, but then he got over as the guy who had multiple personalities. So he's the outlier. He's the exception that proves the rule. But I don't know that if Mick Foley had just come in being nice Mick Foley, wonderful fucking guy, and that was his first personality, shown to the wrestling fans, I don't know if we'd be talking about his documentary, but there's still the level of commitment to, in some way, being real that all those guys had. But anyway, back to the action clips. And I know you haven't had a chance to see the whole 2-hour thing yet, but you saw some parts of it. And we're not seeing anything that looks like, we're seeing guys doing those moves, but we're not seeing guys that look like that do the moves and make them look like that, and the people react to them like that. Because of as I mentioned on our last program, I think overall the exposure and pussification of professional wrestling. Every altercation in the fucking Austin Bio clip that they showed looked like people out of control trying to fucking grab each other by the throat. That just was the way I took it.
Yeah, I've only seen the first hour or so, and so far it's really well done. It's slick. Big surprise seeing Jim Ross. I don't know if he's been talking about this before, but heard you talk a little bit about it and other people. But Jim Ross flat out said that WWE was subsidizing ECW.
Well, yeah, that's not been of a thing that was open to question, was it? Still?
Well, Paul claims it was a little different.
Boy, start any sentence with those two words. Paul claims.
Doesn't Paul E. claim that the only thing that could be considered subsidized would be when WWE took Too Cold Scorpio, made him Flash Funk, that Paul E. apparently had a deal with Tommy Boy Records for Scorpio music, and this would ruin the plan, so Vince paid him the difference that he would have been owed from Tommy Boy Records.
All I'm saying is I was sitting there when Bruce, I don't remember whether Tommy's records were involved or Billy's records or Susie's records or anybody else's record collection. Bruce was there one day. We were sitting at the table and he was telling Vince that, well, now we've got Scorpio and we've taken some of Paul's talent. And I guess he's lost, and maybe he did mention he's lost this sponsorship or whatever. He didn't, I guarantee you, he didn't go into any detail on Tommy Boy Records, or Vince would have zoned out even worse than I just did. But the point is, Vince said, fuck it, put him down for $1,000 a week because we took his talent. And Bruce wrote his little note down, and that was not for such and such time or until it reaches such and such amount. Said put him down for $1,000 a week. And I was like, well, fuck, if I'd have known it was that easy, I'd have been asking you about this from Tennessee a year and a half ago or whatever. But nevertheless.
So how do you think Vince McMahon saw ECW? And how knowledgeable at all was he of ECW and what it was and Paul Heyman?
Well, see, that's again, he never saw any of it. He never watched any of it because he never watched any other wrestling besides what he was producing. He knew that Bruce liked Paul, and he knew that there was talent there and that Paul was trying to do, as he would have termed it, and I don't even think Vince wouldn't even have used the term independent. That wasn't a wrestling term. It just, Vince would have known that Paul was trying to run his own company, just like I was, and he was respectful of that. And if he had first Bruce and then, to a much greater extent, Shitstain, tell him, oh, how great this stuff is and how, revolutionary it is, and there it's for the young people or whatever, but they didn't actually ever show him any because his fucking brain would have exploded if he'd have seen some of the diving off of scaffolds, frogs splashing garbage cans through ladders on fire, whatever the fuck. And I've mentioned before, just when they showed that Bill Alfonso and Beulah match where Fonzie hit a fucking artery and literally bathed in blood, and they're having the intergender shit and they're dropping fucking what's her name on her head. I took the VHS. I said, just so you see what you're getting into. And I played it for Vince. That's the first bit of ECW he'd ever seen. He's like, huh. But it didn't matter. because they basically, by that point, they figured, well, we can have a pipeline of talent here that we can keep away from WCW. So since Paul was running television, it was kind of like a fucking stumbling block that they could put in front of Atlanta by him channeling his guys to them when he was done with them, and or maybe sometimes before, and or giving them a place to potentially send some people so that they wouldn't leave completely the fold and go to Atlanta. And that, for about a year and a half, that's what they were thinking about. And then, WWE business was so hot at that point that, I don't know if he got that $1,000 a week all the way until they closed up, but it was for a while there till I was gone.
And whose idea was the ECW Raw in New York?
Either Bruce's or Shitstain's, because it's not like I was pitching we should work with ECW, and I don't think at that point JR didn't care what we were going to do, but it wasn't like he was saying, oh, this will be a great thing. It was whoever was appealing to Vince's known mental state that New York is the center of the world, and somebody said, oh, these guys have a counterculture type audience, and they can make, if we get something going with them in New York at this ballroom that they used to shoot their show in, then all the underground wrestling fans will be talking about it. And I said, that's the extent that Vince really knew what the fuck. He would deal with Paul Lee on a fucking businessman basis, but he didn't know what the fuck that promotion was doing, nor did he care.
Did you see A&E has another show, which is, I guess, the wrestlers search for their lost memorabilia?
Yeah. Well, and the only thing is, I've got to be honest. I tried to watch it last night. I nodded off on the last 15 or 20 minutes, but part of it was they were going to get the memorabilia. They knew where it was. They knew who had it. Well, then how does that make it lost? Shit, this is our lost memorabilia. We got to go and get it. Let's go over to so-and-so's place and pick it up. That's that. I must admit that it's not really lost treasures to me. I mean, lost treasures to me would be, fucking Buddy Rogers' jacket that he wore the night that he fucking, debuted in St. Louis in 1948 as the Atomic Blonde, or whatever the case, not, Mankind's first shirt from 20 years ago when I'd already been in the business for 20 years. And that's some more, normally I would be after, because I love American Pickers, I love Pawn Stars, I love old stuff, I love memorabilia, but this was not a classic program or a holy grail videotape of a match that has just surfaced. This was, stuff that the guys that I used to hang out with were wearing. So, and that's what, and honestly, and I haven't brought this up, I don't know, but they had contacted me over a year ago when they started this, I guess, the concept for the program, because they're going to have Kane and Taker together. And they wanted to know if I had a poster or any kind of memorabilia from the match with Unabomber and Undertaker from Smoky Mountain Wrestling. I said, well, we didn't do posters. I said, I've got the tape. I can hold the cassette up and you can show it. But I said, that's not really a piece of memorabilia. And the young lady, it wasn't WWE I was talking to. It was a producer for A&E themselves that were working on it. And I was going to follow up with her, and I would have, but then the pandemic came, and I'm not going to have anybody in the house, nor was I going to go anywhere. And then one of the producers, a fellow from A&E who was working on the Biography series, had contacted me a month or two later. That's when we're already in the pandemic. And I got back with him and was like, I'm going to sit all this out, but I wish y'all good luck. But I really didn't have any specific piece of something that would commemorate the first Taker Kane match besides, memories of it. And I don't need to be on everything. Also, I didn't want to work opposition to the Dark Side of the Ring folks. And they slipped in November when things had died down a little bit with the pandemic, and they'd been in a motorhome for 2 weeks, all by themselves, quarantined away from everybody, wandering across America. So we did a limited in-person with that. But anyway, as far as the Treasures program, I like my treasures, all the old shit that nobody else gives a fuck about on national television. But it was a well-done program. And, of course, Stephanie and Triple H, huge memorabilia collectors. They know their business, boy.
Give me a break.
I wonder, besides, I bet you neither one of them has any wrestling memorabilia whatsoever not related to their own career or, in Stephanie's case, somebody in her family.
No, I would bet Triple H probably has some stuff.
Well, that's true. As a matter of fact, he probably... does he have it at his house, or is it in the soon-to-be WWE Hall of Fame brick and mortar, and right now in the warehouse somewhere? But like he made him turn loose of some money to get the original Bruno belt and some other things. So I guess, yeah, that's probably true. I don't know that they're experts on the memorabilia or the collectors of same or the locations of same around the country for the real old stuff, the real cool stuff.
No. And the show about the real cool stuff would actually be a better show. It just wouldn't have the star power.
Yeah.
Of, we're looking for Steve Austin's tooth or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
They,
God damn it. I wonder if they want to do, hold on. I wonder if they want to do a piece on Shawn Michaels' hair. I could try to track that down. But yeah, they called you about one of your archives, right?
The biography show, it was licensing issues, but I decided that I kind of don't want to do anything with WWE, so I didn't even engage the conversation. So no licensing of my photos. And then for the treasure hunters, or what is it, Lost Treasures?
Lost Treasures.
They got in touch with me. They wanted to know if I had a specific piece of wrestling memorabilia. And I responded, I wish you guys good luck, but I really don't want anything to do with any WWE of things. And, I'm not going to be involved. And then the email I got back was, we understand, but can you tell us if you have it? So then I really didn't respond the next time. But
did you have it?
No, actually I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't.
And actually, yeah, now that the first call I got from the first young lady doing the treasures thing was, she just explained the concept. And I was like, well, yeah, I've got some shit, but do I have to really sell it to you? Or is this a work like fucking with the storage unit thing of fucking, oh, God damn it. I used to watch it all the time, and then I found out they were salting the units. What, Storage Wars or whatever.
They're salting the units?
There was an article on that a few years ago. They were salting the units. And they and the people that were more photogenic, like old Brandy and et cetera, they were giving them priority treatment and putting stuff in for them, or what? That's what I heard. But then it lost all the appeal because the business was exposed, just like wrestling.
Wait, who's giving preferential treatment to Brandy? I've heard this before.
No, that's the wrestling company. Oh. We're not talking about them now. But anyway, where was I going with this?
Lost
the point
treasures.
is, when they asked me, I said, I've got some treasures, but do I really have to sell them? Because I don't want to fucking sell them. And I'm thinking, the St. Louis programs or the Smoky Mountain Championship belts or some of my, vintage shit. We're looking for something with Kane and Taker. Oh, I ain't got that. I got the tape. But I was going to resist on the grounds that I didn't want to actually sell anything if I had to sell it. But then, what are they going to do with that shit? They're just going to put it back in the warehouse.
Throw it back in the warehouse, and it'll be lost to time. Yeah.
Sort of like the box in the closing scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Just kind of wheel it on in.
That's one of the big fears in being a wrestling historian, is just trying to save this stuff before it disappears, and it'll either, one of two things happens. Three things. It gets into the hands of someone responsible who will care about it and maybe help out other historians. 2, WWE buys it, and they bury it in their warehouse, and it's gone. There's no research that'll ever be obtained from that data source, whatever that information is. Or 3, it gets into the hands of an independent person who just wants to break it up and sell everything in pieces. And then it doesn't do anyone any good except for the person selling it.
Carpetbaggers.
That's right.
Prevaricators.
So this is our review of Lost Treasures. You watched it. I didn't watch it.
Yeah, well, I like I said, I went to sleep on it, but but it was good.
What were
to
they
see.
looking for, though?
They were going for Mick Foley's first shirt, Mankind's first shirt.
I thought you were kidding when you said that.
No, that's God damn it. See, now you can't even believe when I'm really telling the truth about the program. You can't believe it.
Because it sounds ridiculous. Not we're looking for the Lost Ark. We're looking for his first T-shirt.
Mankind's first, his top, the top to the Mankind outfit.
Oh, okay.
The brown thing with the symbols on it and everything. And then, and they've talked about they're going to be searching for Ric Flair and his Ric Flair's butterfly robe and this and that and the other thing and whatever. And I can't remember because, like I said, I went to sleep on it. It was very late at night. It's 11 o'clock at night on a Sunday night. So I was a little bleary. It was good to see Mick again. He was there on the program.
All right. Well, let's get another question here, Jim. This is about another WWE-related program. This question was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Justin. On the recent Broken Skull sessions, Chris Jericho was talking about his new book that lists all of his matches. As he says, he wrote down every one and has also written down the date, the amount of money he earned for each one, and there's a period there. So, and the amount of money he earned for each one. He claimed on the interview that no one else has that, referring to him being the only wrestler to keep said records. Obviously, Jim has similar records too. Does Jim know of any other wrestlers that kept such records?
Well, almost everybody to some extent, because originally I was told when I first got in the business to keep a date book because that's the way the guys kept track of, obviously, especially in the days, and if a star was working more than one territory because he was a big name or he was flying out for shots or even just you got in a territory, they give you a booking sheet. You put it in your book, and that's the same place you record your mileage, which is a tax deduction, and money you spent on a hotel or food along the way or whatever, all your expenses. And then, that was standard for most guys that paid their taxes. To record that information in their book so they'd know where to go, when to be there. If it was a different building, they'd make a note of that, and their road expenses. A lot of guys then would go further and they'd, write down the match they were in, and a lot would put their finish down. Of course, year by year after that book became, no good, sometimes guys would throw them away. Sometimes guys would throw them in a drawer and you'd find them years later. I have Black Panther Jim Mitchell's date book from 1946 and 47, where it had been in the trunk when they found his house, when John Cosper had been writing that book. And even then, he didn't write down his matches or his finishes, but it was all of his road expenses and dates and places that he was booked at. And then guys like Johnny Weaver were famous. Weaver, in his book, he wrote his finishes down and he had all of his books. So, and I think actually he had just one book supposedly that he put finishes in. But the point is, he had at one point in time, who knows whatever happened to it, written down a book or books with all the finishes he ever did in the Carolinas, all those years of being a top guy. So that way people would come to him and all the time ask him, "Hey, Johnny, give me a finish." Well, he'd do it off the top of his head. But guys who took the business more seriously would do shit like that. So when I started, I was writing down, my business and road expenses and the bookings, but I also started putting what match I was involved in and who went over, what the finish was. And then obviously guys wrote down as part of their business information what payoff they got for that town. But I always wanted to know the house too. And a lot of times, what was the house? Oh, it was $12,000. Well, they would hear that and they'd get their check later on. They wouldn't write the $12,000 down. They'd just write down their payoff, and they'd say, that was a shitty payoff for a $12,000 house or whatever. But I like to keep track of the overall business. And, that's how I started doing my books, and I did them through, the time I managed the Midnight and then Smoky Mountain. And then I've got the booking books from the WWE and then OVW. And I must admit, over, the last however many years, when I've just started doing a shot here, a shot there, I didn't bother to write it down, or a match at a fan fest or whatever, because it wasn't applicable to me anymore as far as business. I probably screwed myself on some books I'll eventually write, not knowing the exact dates and number of things over the last 15 years. But point is, it was great of Chris to do it. He's not the first one to do it. He's one in the upper echelon of completists over a period that long, and to have everything, it's not unheard of. But it makes a good book. That's why I did the Midnight Express book.
I was about to say, it could be a pretty interesting book, though.
It was when I did it for the Midnight Express.
Yeah, other than the fact that Chris will rate all of his stuff as being great, even when it wasn't.
Well, no, but hold on. He's not like giving those matches star ratings or anything, is he?
We don't know yet. We'll see. I wouldn't put it past him.
If it's a recounting of his events and here's the dates and the places and whatever, but even I did not. I just reported the facts and happenings of the matter and didn't rate whether it was great unless somebody else said that.
Maybe you should do that. Reclaim your star rating system and just start rating your own matches.
I don't have time.
Well, Jim, let's see if you have time for this next question. Sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Daniel in Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Fort Smith, Arkansas. There is a wonderful Cajun restaurant down there, and I can't remember the name of it. And I guess I'll never see it again anyway now, because we are living in a pandemic-ridden world.
It's no secret, Cornette isn't a fan of most modern wrestlers' height. Wrestlers' height. I guess the overall height for all the wrestlers.
Yeah, the height of wrestlers.
The go-to excuse for the internet fans is Rey Mysterio when it comes to smaller guys. Can Jim explain why Rey was able to get over, and just his general thoughts on Mysterio?
Ricky Starr! It's the same. We just said this earlier in the program. There's an exception to everything that proves the rule, and usually the exception is somebody that is wildly talented in whatever they're doing that nobody else could get away with, and it just looks like people copying them afterwards. Rey Mysterio, because of his unique balance and precision with the shit that he could do, and the fact that he grew up from a young age in and around wrestling families and the inside working of the business, so he understood how you just don't do shit because a monkey can just do shit, but you do it with emotion and passion and for a reason and at a time, and you get sympathy on yourself when you're that small against these big guys, but then you come out with this incredible maneuver, and there was the flashy outfit. And that's the only place that Rey Mysterio didn't get over was in WCW when they took his mask off, right? And as a matter of fact, they sent him to Cincinnati, and that's when we were doing Les Thatcher's HWA TV down here at our building. And he was in Danny's office, and I was looking at Rey Mysterio with no mask on and bald-headed and looked 12 years old and looked like a 12-year-old child. And I'm like, what the fuck have they done? And sure enough, as soon as not them, but as soon as he puts his mask back on and fucking becomes Rey Mysterio again, he's over again. It's for the same reason that Mr. Wrestling 2 put the mask on, because Johnny Walker looked older than a goddamn $2 cowboy boot. He just looked like shit. But he had a body that still you couldn't tell, and he could work. So he put the mask on, and he was a different person. Jerry Stubbs was a balding, redneck-looking fuck that you could find at any fucking Jiffy Lube. But Mr. Olympia, from the neck down, was a goddamn Adonis, and with that cool gold lame and fucking red Mr. Olympia mask, he looked like a star. So Rey Mysterio had he got the business mentally because he was around it and in it for so long, around so many people. He understood the psychology of it. He was an amazing athlete and acrobat, but also because of the character that he created, and I hate to use that word, but Rey Mysterio is a character, but because of that gimmick and the way he was a superhero, his being Hispanic didn't hurt at a time when the population here was increasing. Everything worked for him, but Rey doesn't just go out and have goofy lucha matches and fall on his ass 50% of the times that he tries something. When Rey Mysterio did fuck up, it was unusual and, not something that happened every day. So, and he's the difference that proves that if everybody else tries to do that, then they're just imitating the guy that really did it, and that guy got over the best with it. So that's my opinion of Rey Mysterio.
I had another question here, and I actually can't find it, but it made me think of it while you were answering that. I'll ask you a version of it, because I read it earlier before we started the show. Just trying to quickly scroll to see if I could bump into it, and I don't know where it is. What were your thoughts about Kevin Nash using the term vanilla midgets for various guys in the late 90s?
Well, it's a great term. He was misapplying it to some people. I think, wasn't Chris Benoit one of those people? He called a vanilla midget?
I believe so.
Holy shit. Yeah, see, that's the thing. There's always been a little man complex in the business. Guys that were small that got to be main event stars had a complex. People were going to view them as small, so they always tried to work bigger than they were. There's also the big man complex, where the big guys look down on the little guys because blah, blah, blah. Nash was correct in that you have to have personality. And Nash was correct in that you have to have some kind of legitimate looking visual to you, whether it's height or weight or a physique or a combination of both. Of course, not everybody can be 7 feet tall. Most people can't. And that's why, Nash, the big guys, and Nash in particular, goes overboard. To think that Chris Benoit was a vanilla midget, it's ridiculous. His talent and his personality and his passion, he did get over, and he could get over, and that's why he got over. Because he outworked everybody. Was Jericho part of that crew, the vanilla midget crew, or was who came over? Benoit, Dean Malenko? I wish Nash had called him that to his face. He might have stretched Nash because,
his brother would have. I don't know if he would have.
Well, here's the thing. Anybody that's short enough for Nash can't punch him can fucking stretch Nash because they could just take him down at the knees. But yeah, honestly, Dean Malenko had a better career in Japan and a better career as a trainer and a producer because he had a mind, and he was an excellent technical worker, and he had a mind for the business, and he grew up in a wrestling family, et cetera, but he wasn't very fucking interesting in the ring, except to a fan of the technique. Modern day Tony Charles. I love to watch Tony Charles. Almost nobody better, but Tony Charles never drew any money. But the point is, there's some truth in anything that anybody says practically, but you couldn't just say blanket vanilla midgets. Size depends, as I said, not only on the actual metrics, but the way that people look. And that's my fault with the modern crop and the promoters that don't try to give them any help. Like we said, Pac, you look at Pac on screen, and you could say that he weighs 215 pounds and nobody would bat an eye. But they'll announce him at 189 just because I don't know why, because they think it doesn't matter, but it does. That's why their audience is so small, because their wrestlers are so small. And I'm sorry, but somebody the other day actually said on Twitter or whatever, well, the Young Bucks aren't that much smaller than the Midnight Express. Weren't the Midnight Express guys small too? Yeah, they were for the time period. Bobby's 6 feet tall, and he weighed anywhere from 215 when he went to Louisiana to 245 during his plump days in WCW. And Dennis was 6'2" and between 225 and 235. And Stan, 6 feet tall, 6'1", 215 on a light day. And he, as a member of the Fabs, he was probably going 235, 240. And they all look small next to the rest of the wrestlers. So that's the point I'm making, is it's not just the actual size, it's the visual presentation. And if you can help the presentation by augmenting a guy like they have done since the dawn of time, you give the guy an extra 10 or 15 pounds. You give the guy an extra inch or two. Don't make it fucking goofy or people will notice and make fun of it, but you always exaggerate up a little bit because that puts in people's mind that a person is more dangerous than what they might be. But these knuckleheads just assume, well, the audience is all a bunch of little half-grown fucking, what do they call them? The people that can't get fucked, but they want to, the incels. It's all a bunch of half-grown fucking incels, so we don't want to intimidate them, so we'll make all our wrestlers seem less intimidating and smaller and less tough.
So you're against who Kevin Nash applied the term to, but not against the term because it applies so much in modern wrestling.
There can be a vanilla midget if you've got a fucking
Who's a vanilla midget?
Well, name half of the AEW roster. Little Pip. Little Pip Sabian, there's a vanilla midget. He's a fishy, pale white, fucking little short guy nobody gives a shit about. He has no flavor. He's a vanilla midget.
What about Gargano?
There you go. I'm sorry. If Kevin Nash called Chris Benoit a vanilla midget, you think he's not going to call Johnny Gargano a vanilla midget? Not to his face now, because they still are associated with the same company, maybe. But, point taken. The term is applicable in some cases, but who he was applying it to, he was going overboard. And it's just, I'm sorry, but it's not like that you can't see from examples that what I'm saying is true. From the people, from the biography show that we just talked about, and the intensity from the people that have gotten over to people that haven't, you can't fucking, I'm sorry, I love the guy, but I used to tell Randy Hales, Tony Falk does not need to be on your television program as a wrestler. Tony is a veteran. This was in 1999 during the Power Pro Wrestling days. Tony's a veteran. Tony's a hell of a guy. Tony is smart. Tony is on the headset for him. Tony could be a manager. Tony could be a producer. Tony could be a number of things, but he wasn't in physical condition it wasn't that was one thing that we lost in the old days. In the 70s, you could get a guy that looked like teetotal dog shit over as a middle card guy in any territory. But that horse has left the barn. Guys need to at least look the part now that they're playing on television of somewhat of a professional athlete. Not to say everybody's got to be ripped. There can be the Bronson Reed, just like there used to be the Crusher Blackwell. But you have to have now they think they're all actors and entertainers. So why don't they look at it like Hollywood? Tell me where I would get cast in a part previously made famous by Sylvester Stallone in a fucking Hollywood remake. Would that happen? No, because I don't look like anything like anybody that Sylvester Stallone would play. Well, right now, you have a bunch of guys that just because they can and I can go out there and say, yo, Adrian, I probably know more words and speak English gooder than Sylvester Stallone does, old mumble mouth. But I don't look like it. So I don't look right. So I can't be Rocky, or I can't be fucking Rambo, or I can't be whoever the fuck he was. Because I can say the words, I could do the actions, people would laugh at it. It's the same thing here. You've got a bunch of children imitating wrestling moves and obviously winking at each other while they're doing it, and they are replicating in front of ever fewer amounts of people the shit that guys like Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock in 1998, or Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes and the Road Warriors and the Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express in 1988, or Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair in 1978, or goddamn whoever the fuck in 1968. The only thing is they don't look like it and they don't believe it, so the people don't believe it either.
Well, I guess that was the end of that question, Jim.
I don't even remember what that question was.
Kevin Nash and the term vanilla midgets.
I don't care either. I don't care what that question is.
Well, our next question.
We haven't been keeping up on Young Rock either, but I'll spoiler alert, nothing's happened.
Yeah, spoiler alert, not one listener has asked us, where's the review of Young Rock?
2 weeks ago, Junkyard Dog apologized to Leah Maivia.
Oh, shit. Wow.
Yes, 2 weeks ago, Junkyard Dog at a get-together. The whole gang was in town when Young Rock came back from playing football in Miami. So there's Andre the Giant, like 1 year before his death, hanging out with Junkyard Dog and the Wild Samoans and Randy Savage in fucking Leah Maivia's.
In Hawaii?
Yes, they were in Hawaii, I believe. Yes, they were. I think. Anyway, the point is JYD apologized for going off to work for the opposition promoter that never actually happened in real life. And he gave an eloquent speech about how, and I betrayed you, Lee Maivia, when you believed in me. And I was thinking, this is the modern acting equivalent of what I was just talking about, that people don't fit the fucking... JYD didn't know what half the words in this fucking 30-second statement that this guy said meant and never used the other half in his entire fucking life. And I knew JYD. I worked with JYD, and you, actor name X, because I don't know what your name is, or no JYD. It sounded like fucking Fraser Crane trying to imitate JYD.
Well, speaking of which, I wasn't going to do this now, but I just noticed this. We may or may not have some cameos later in the show, if not next week. But on Cameo now is Brett Azar, who plays the Iron Sheik in Young Rock.
Oh, good Lord.
How much do you think he's charging?
I'm afraid to say it is probably too much.
$50.
Well, I guess that ain't bad. Has he done anything else ever?
It says the Iron Sheik in Young Rock on NBC, Arnold Schwarzenegger body and stunt double, Worst Cooks season 15.
Maybe that $50 is a little bit much.
Well, we'll listen to this for a second.
He don't look anything like the Iron Sheik does now, or like Ali Vaziri did before he became the Iron Sheik.
And here in this video, he doesn't even have the Iron Sheik mustache, but let's hear this for a moment.
So, Gabby, I hear it's your birthday. And I hear you're having a great Clovid birthday. But seeing that you're turning like 45,
did he say Clovid?
Yes.
Or was it 70-something? I mean, you survived the dinosaurs dying, so I guess you can survive Clovid just fine. You've been through plenty of pandemics because you're so damn old. Anyway, I hear you had a peanut butter and chocolate bourbon cake? Yeah, it's good for you. Yeah, you flambe the cake, you put the ramen, you put the bourbon in, you blow up the house, and then it tastes really good and it's good for you. No, it's bad for you. I do not want your cake. No. You eat it all. You get 1 day. No, you get 1 hour. It's the only time you get to eat junk food. 1 hour per week. Eat the whole cake. Shove it in Adrian's face. Get a picture of it. Send me that. Otherwise, man, happy birthday. Thanks for being a fan. Thanks for the support. And I hope your day is pretty damn awesome, man. Hope I can help that. Be well.
That was nice.
Well, Hell, it would have been better if they didn't have some fucking yahoo from the shipping department on the phone in the background.
Pretty good Arnold.
I thought he was an Arnold stunt double, not an Arnold voiceover actor.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive.
That'd be one word.
Well, Jim, before we go any further here
Where did that come from?
Where did what come from?
Somebody just sent it to you and you said, well, now's the time we'll play that.
Well, I have another question that relates to Cameo. So I went to Cameo looking for a specific wrestler. And one of the first things that popped up was a picture of this guy dressed like the Iron Sheik. And I said, we're talking about these phonies on this show. And here he is. But speaking of a Cameo update, by the way, folks, we will be doing cameos again in the future whenever I finish filling all the orders for these action figures. There's the Cameo update. Well, Jim, a lot of people may be upset they're not able to get a cameo from you right now, in the moment, at this moment. And they're thinking about getting together and suing you right now.
Oh, come on. Just put some effort into it at this point. For heaven's sake, just the people are going to sue over no cameos. At least you could have said you think that Khosrau Vaziri should retain the services of an intellectual property attorney so that he can sue the people who are impersonating him and making money off of his name and reputation that he carefully carved out for himself in a completely drug-free atmosphere. That's what you should have been saying. And I know the person that he could retain to do self-same aforesaid suing.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. Still to the rest.
Yes, folks, whether you are a former Iranian army wrestling champion who became a professional and engaged in a very famous, however checkered career, and now someone is appropriating your likeness, or you have been mistreated and abused by a major corporation, if you've been abused by a representative like a doctor at the Veterans Administration Hospital, if you or a member of your family has been the victim of elder abuse in a nursing home, if you have been poisoned by Roundup or by asbestos in your talcum powder, if you have been poisoned, your entire city's water supply been poisoned by chemicals left underground, or if you've got any other kind of gripe or grievance that you feel needs redress in the legal system, call Stephen P. New, newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. He's representing people from professional wrestlers to just the little people out there like you and me that need some champion of justice to defend their rights in a court of law, especially with the American justice system being as fucked up as it is. You need somebody that knows this shit inside and out. And Stephen P. New, if it's one thing he knows inside and out, it is shit.
I think you mean a courtroom.
A courtroom full of shit. That's what you'll get. Every time you're in a courtroom, you've got a courtroom full of shit. You need a shit shoveler to shovel all the shit out of the way and get you the shit you deserve. And Stephen P. New is the best shit shoveler in the world. He will dig you out of whatever hole of shit you're buried in, and he will get you the shit that you deserve so that you can go and tell everybody else that they're the shits. And you'll be the shit.
Well, speaking of the shits, let's get a few more questions here this week on this show, Jim. This next one, sent on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru, from The Big Squeeze.
The Big Squeeze?
The Young Bucks gave an interview that basically said they have too many stables and it's too hard to book guys by themselves. Can't wait to hear your thoughts. I think there's some grammar problems with this question. Have you seen this interview?
No. What, they came out and said, yeah, we've fucked this all up?
No, I think the question got it wrong. Let me find the exact quote and then I'll go to the interview. The interview was with TV Insider and Scott Fishman. And At one point here, the question...
Sounds fishy to me.
It sounds fishy to you. The question comes up, how do you respond to the argument that there are too many groups or factions in AEW right now? And then Nick Jackson said, New Japan Pro Wrestling has been booking factions for more than 40 years, and they're still around. I see the argument, but I think North American fans have never seen this many at one time. They are used to 1, 2, or 3 stables in a company. It's easier to book angles. It's easier to get more people involved with different groups. If you're not aligned in a stable, you're alone. And that's hard to book sometimes.
Oh my God.
That's why we have a lot of factions. It has clearly worked.
Clearly. Because nobody, absolutely nobody, knows who's on whose side, who's mad at each other, or why, or even who is in what group. Because everybody's in a group and they fucking bop back and forth at the drop of a hat. And this is what... It's almost like I'm listening to somebody talk about a completely different thing. And it's not just if you asked anybody who has been involved in professional wrestling for more than 20 years, they would say the exact opposite of what that Nimrod just said. It's harder when everybody's in a group. It's easier when somebody's by themselves. That's exactly the antithesis of what anybody in the history of wrestling up until about 15 or 20 years ago, maybe not even that, would have said. And almost like you would have to sit down and figure out what is the exact opposite of a true statement that I can make. Let me write it down to make it as opposite as possible from what the actual fact of the matter is, and then I'll say that. That's how far off from any kind of normal wrestling logic that is. But I expect nothing less from those two fucking morons.
The headline of the article in TV Insider is AEW's Matt and Nick Jackson are done being the Disney version of the Young Bucks.
Well, good. What line of work are they taking up next?
You don't like them any better as heels than you did as baby faces?
No. No. They're not battling against the tide as heels because the natural reaction to any professional wrestling fan to watching the Young Bucks is, why are these people on my fucking television? Look at these fucking children playing wrestler. And can they please go the fuck away? So at least if they're heels, that's not exactly the reaction anybody wants. Would you please go away? But at least it's more, they're not battling against the tide. But what have I said on this entire program? Small children imitating wrestlers' moves with no fucking visual credibility and their tongue in their cheek that they don't really mean anything. And they're playing a part. And they bop back and forth in the part they're playing every time the wind blows. Are they heels? Are they baby faces? Are they mad at this guy? Because of all the factions. It's basically, again, a small little private club, just like Ring of Honor was at one time. When they went on television, the existing Ring of Honor fans were just bullshit. That we would try to actually explain all of these weird wrestling quirks that no other company did, the handshakes and all that stuff. It took their private club away. Well, the Young Bucks and their ilk have a small private club group of fans that like to see children imitate wrestling and do cheerleading moves and gymnastics. Most people don't like that, and they ain't never going to. So whether they're heels, baby faces, it doesn't matter what they do. As Pat Malone, the Green Shadow, used to say, I'll fight you, fuck you, or run you a foot race. I'm going to win either way. It's the same thing. Whatever they do is going to be the same thing. All the little goofy fucking children fans are going to like it. And the people watching the biography of Stone Cold Steve Austin are going to imagine, What the fuck if Austin came down and picked his teeth with those two little grade schoolers? Where's the real men? So, no, I don't like them any better as heels than baby faces because it's fucking preposterous. And they say stupid shit like that. And then an amateur fucking former Fantasy Federation booker online looks to them like they're veterans and they know somehow they're wrestling experts because of all the many years they've been around wrestling. I've got underwear in my drawer that are older than either one of them. And he thinks that's the way you book, which is why the fucking show looks like it does. So what?
Yeah, he said there, this is a way of getting as many people on the show as possible.
Yes. Get everybody you can on the show. Get everybody a payoff. This is Make-A-Wish. We're operating Make-A-Wish here. All these guys that want to be wrestlers and always have wanted to be wrestlers in the worst way possible, and that's exactly how they do it, now get to be wrestlers on Tony Khan's dime because he thinks that people like the fucking Cucamonga kids are wrestling experts. They're experts in doing this kind of shit that you see them do that appeals to a small group of people, and most people walking around go, what the fuck is that shit all about? And that's where we are. But now they're getting a chance to do it on television.
Well, Jim, let's stay on the topic of which is not the name of the promotion, of AEW right now. Like I said, ECW on my mind. Kind of like a booker of AEW. But have you been following the news about Ivelisse?
They finally, the news was that they released her, which was shocking to me since, has she been on television in the last 6 months since she had that rotten match that everybody shows the clips of where she just became disinterested and just decided to sit there and yawn?
She just stopped working.
Yeah.
Right in front of the camera.
Yeah. Wasn't that with Thunder Rosa or was that with Serena?
It was with Thunder Rosa.
Yeah.
And other than that match, the only other things I remember with her on TV were they would have her and Diamante was her partner at ringside. And Ivelisse was like the one person who didn't really seem to be into singing the Jericho song at ringside. Didn't they win like a tag team tournament where they had it all on YouTube, so we didn't actually see it? It was like a tag team tournament that got Brandy into the finals, remember?
Yes. But that's the whole thing. She got released finally. She's had 6 months gratis of a job apparently because she should have got fired in that clip that we were talking about in the match with Thunder Rosa when she just got disinterested and just took a flying mare and just sat there and fucking got a bored look on her face and yawned while a hold was put on her. The fucking entitled goddamn snotty douchebag. Fuck her. What she tweeted after, they just released her. And imagine this, they don't fire anybody for unprofessional behavior, obviously, at AEW. So to release her, she must be a fucking douchebag. And then she tweets, well, same thing happens again. I speak up about mistreatment and I get released. Because that's the same thing that happened. Didn't they let her go from another fucking outlaw? Was it Impact?
Maybe. She was with Lucha
was she
Underground.
in developmental? She had Lucha Underground, whatever the fuck. Point is, she's apparently an entitled, stuck-up, snotty douchebag. But I don't care what her fucking story is. I don't care if she saves nuns and crippled children from fucking animals in darkest Africa. What I saw on that one match of her on national television was enough for me, if it was my company, to call her over here and say, see that ring? Take a good look. As a matter of fact, take a fucking picture because you'll never step one foot in it again. Get the fuck out of my building. What the fuck? How do you get away with shit like that? I mean, and it wasn't even Bruiser Brody sitting down on somebody in the middle of the ring in Houston. That was Bruiser fucking Brody, a mega gate attraction. And still he got heat and still people didn't like it. This fucking twat thinks she can just goddamn do it anytime she wants? Fuck her. Feed her fish heads.
Well, I have a few more tweets from her.
I'm sure I'll love her even less after I hear those.
someone tweeted to Ivelisse, "Don't worry, I know about the no selling against Rosa." And I did read it, but it's from some random guy. Well, Ivelisse responded to whoever this person is. "Nope, it was her being unprofessional. She did the same thing in Lucha Underground as well. She was unprofessional, hurting my tag team partner's jaw the next match and slandering my name the entire time in AEW." And then she seems to be really laying it in about Thunder Rosa. And here's another quote. This is from an article that Fightful Select did. "I spoke up about mistreatment from a coach, even to other women too, and there were witnesses, and I was the one suspended and left in limbo and just now let go. And nothing has been done at all the entire time about Thunder Rosa slandering my name the entire time in AEW and doing everything to sabotage my position there. I kept quiet. Thunder Rosa also has a history of getting involved with officials in order to get ahead, which there was a lawsuit and everything in Lucha Underground." I didn't know about that.
I have not heard that either.
So
I assume a lot of people sued Lucha Underground for impersonating a wrestling promotion, but here's an idea. Since the women want to be equal to the men, right? And we've had some conversations and discussions about this here on the program lately. The women in wrestling want to be equal to the men, right? And want to be treated equally, want to be presented equally. Well, then I suggest that Tony Khan do the same thing that any other wrestling promoter would have done down through history. Said, "Hey, Ivelisse, come here. Hey, Thunder Rosa, come here. You guys got problems? Causing a fucking issue in my locker room? Fucking getting unfavorable, unsavory publicity on me from the outside? There's the fucking ring. Go settle it right now. Get it all out of your fucking system. And the one that comes back and says that they still can't work with the other one is fucking fired." But I bet old Ivelisse don't want any of Thunder Rosa because she's a fucking shooter. So in that case, best thing for Ivelisse to do is stick a sock in your fucking pie hole, honey, and tootle on off. Because Thunder Rosa will kick your fucking ass.
all right. Well,
But they don't want to be treated. They don't want to be treated any differently. So that's what anybody else would have done.
well,
Hey,
Vince wasn't
guys, you
doing
want-
that. Vince wasn't putting two guys in a room and
I
saying, "All
said
right, fight it
wrestling
out."
promoters. Wrestling promoters, not sports entertainment. You guys can't get along. You want to talk about it? You want to talk it out? We need you to coexist. You say you're going to coexist. You say you can't. Okay, get the fuck out of here then, because I don't give a fuck what your goddamn personal problems are.
Well, those wrestling promoters
Or
back
they
then
could
didn't have to
fucking
worry about
settle-
getting sued in a situation like that, too.
Well, who's going to if they both get in the goddamn ring to settle things? Who's going to fucking sue? It's your fucking choice. I'm giving you the opportunity to get in the ring without charging you rent on it. Settle this fucking thing once and for all. Can't get along, get it on, as Dennis Condrey used to say.
Well, Jim, our next question sent on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from Todd Carteret, I believe is how you pronounce this name.
Todd
Carteret.
and Biff.
He says, pretty sure this had to do with the NHL and not AEW. And he wants to know what you think. And he has an article here. The headline, Chris Jericho says AEW made NXT go screaming and yelling away from Wednesdays. And some of the quotes here. I know WWE NXT was watching our stuff during the show, but this was not a war that we were ever asking for. We were kind of thrust into it by proxy. The reason why we won it, and won it so handily, is we never worried about what anybody else was doing. We just worried about our own show. I think the best thing about being unopposed is now people don't have to decide. There's been a lot of shows that we've done with some great segments and some great moments that might have been missed because people were switching back and forth. Of course, we're competitive. Yes, we wanted to beat NXT. Yes, we wanted to drive them screaming and yelling away from Wednesdays, and we did that.
When the network said we'd like to switch the nights of your program because we got hockey. I guess all's fair in love and war and business, and I can't castigate him too badly for for taking advantage of it and capitalizing on it and saying that. But at the same point, since so many people know that it's not true, does that not look bad? Does it? If he could say it and nobody knew the reason why they switched nights for NXT, that's one thing. But when people know and he still says that, does he not look bad?
You would think, yes.
Like I said, if he could capitalize on it and people didn't know, well, then we got one on you. But does anybody switch back and forth anymore? First of all, there are DVRs. Even I can work my DVR, and I never switch. I could always work a VCR, so I never switched back and forth anyway. But I know they were doing that in the Attitude Era, but does anybody switch back and forth anymore? And also, the programs weren't nearly as important or compelling. The audience is so much smaller. I don't know if there was that much bopping back and forth, or if it was that they just watched whatever they decided to watch that night and maybe watched the other program on DVR. We know that a lot of the AEW fans don't like NXT, and we know a lot of the NXT people don't like AEW. And their first night unopposed, they got about a 50% boost in their audience, an extra 400,000 people from their normal 8 or whatever. NXT usually gets 6, 7. There's some people in there that just didn't. It'll settle down in a few weeks. Who tuned in for NXT and found out it wasn't on and switched over to AEW but won't come back? Who came in because of Tyson and won't come back? Was there anybody appreciably that will now watch AEW every week just because NXT is not on that night? I don't know. Some, yes, but appreciable amounts, I don't know. I think everybody's already decided which horse they like. And there's going to get some crossover just because it's what's called wrestling, but I don't see any major victory here for anybody. They didn't beat NXT off of the night. They didn't pick switching the night. The network did. As far as, basically, Jericho has the right to crow if he can. Like I said, it's kind of, bad because it's see-through. But good Lord, I don't know. We'll find out if a lot of people that weren't watching it before are going to watch it now just because a program that they could have always taped, if they'd have wanted to see this program, now isn't on opposite. I mean, is that going to be the entire audience? Never has been in history when a program goes away. And what else was he talking about in there? There was something else in there.
Well, they ran them off and kicking and screaming.
Well, no, there was some other statement he made that was just, I don't want you to read the whole thing again. I've lost track of it, so we'll just move on.
Yeah, I was going to say I could open it up and try to find what statement it was.
I don't care that much.
Okay. I finally get the article back up and you don't care.
All right, well, what else did he say? There was something else in there he said that was a little screwy.
I know WWE NXT was watching our stuff during their show.
That's what it was. Again, yeah, that may be true, but here's the deal. This started 20 years ago, and because the WWE has not only an incredible production team, but the biggest plethora of equipment and trucks and crew and etc., they can do anything. They started, it was the same thing. On the WCW side, in the Attitude Era, WCW in their truck was watching WWF. WWF in their truck had a monitor and had the WCW feed on. I assume that they still do that anytime that one of their programs is opposite another wrestling program. But in this case, that doesn't mean that they're sitting there reacting to it. Whereas in the Attitude Era days, Vince would be sitting there and somebody would have an ear on it. And if something was said that they could react to, they would do it. And vice versa. Remember the Tony Schiavone being fed the line, oh, that'll put the butts in the seats when Mick Foley wins the title. Well, Bischoff told him to say that, and again, it backfired. But that's because they were watching the program in their truck. But nobody was reacting to or modifying the show because of something that was going on AEW this time around. So I'm sure they were monitoring it. And I'm also sure that there was one guy probably sitting there bored and occasionally tickled, but they didn't change anything about the program they were doing just because they had a monitor on in the truck. So that's a little misleading. I saw them jousting back and forth with each other. I even saw TNA jousting 10 or 15 years ago with them back and forth on some of the TNA tapings. Remember when the fucking idiot Highlander came in WrestleMania weekend and sat in the TNA crowd? And we were down in the middle of a taping. We were down for a tape change or some re-rack of something. And one of the guys in the truck that knew him said, well, that's that fucking whatchamacallit. And Jeff Jarrett said, no, you're shitting me. WrestleMania weekend, WrestleMania was in Orlando, and one of their actual guys that they were using on camera came over and sat in our audience. So Jeff immediately made the call. I can pop that goddamn shot up there when we come back from this break. And there was a crowd shot, and they identified him by his real name. Somebody looked up his real name. I can't remember what it is now, but not his wrestling name because that's copyrighted and that would be owned, but his real name. Well, there's so-and-so, Biff Brown. He's enjoying the matches just like everybody else here. And they ended up firing the guy. As they should have, because he was a fucking idiot. Who does that? And I think he tried to tell him the story was that they were at Universal Studios with his family, his kids or whatever, and he just brought him in to see some of the matches. Oh, guys get in the business that they're not trained anymore. Nobody teaches them a goddamn thing. They don't get the fucking picture. And then it was like, well, Marella, he was laughing. Well, my kid was here and I thought that he was playing a joke for my kid to be entertained. No, we don't entertain fucking kids here of goddamn employees. It's a fucking business, you morons. Just the things that wrestlers do these days and don't understand when they're fucking up is amazing to me.
Well, on that topic, this is something a few people have sent in about Cody Rhodes. It's from Twitter on the topic of will Cody Rhodes turn heel. So from looking at this Twitter chain,
I assume he will. He's the only one that hadn't so far.
Santana of Santana and Ortiz fame tweeted out, if you're confident in your shit, then you should look at no one as competition, just yourself. To which Cody Rhodes replied, amen, with two little hands praying, I guess, next to it. You can't wish away good talent either. The best just get on their level. I'm rooting for this man in the war, ... I mean blood and guts. So then some random person replied, Cody is going to turn. Cody's response was, literally almost no chance, my friend. After a decade of honing my skills at this, and the last 3 to 4 years of such a strong and growing connection with my fans, I'd be a fool to throw it away and swim upstream. Any thoughts on Cody Rhodes?
He's a salmon now. He's a salmon, but he's scared to swim upstream. I don't understand what these people are talking about. I don't understand their mindset. After all these years of honing my skills, yeah, you might be good enough to be a heel now. Because everybody knows it's much easier to be a babyface than it is to be a heel.
Yeah, you're saying you're honing your skills at being able to fool and manipulate people that think you're a good guy? What are these skills?
At the top, it's easier to be a fucking jack-off preliminary heel because you can just go out and cuss at people and fucking piss them off, and it's hard to be a babyface underneath because they have to like you and what is likable about you. But when you get to the top, it's harder to be a heel because it's more psychology. There's more burden on you. You're calling the fucking matches. If they do that anymore, I don't know. So that's why most of the time in the business, guys that became great heels were baby faces early in their career, and then they switched and really turned it on. And Nick Bockwinkel's a classic example. He was a baby face for the first 20 years, 15 years he wrestled. But anyway, I don't know what Cody's ever talking about anymore. You switch heel if there's a reason for it, and to give yourself a boost and give the business a boost. And then you run with that for a while, and if you were a really good baby face, maybe then at the end you switch back. Or if you're a better heel, you stay that way. But it doesn't throw away a connection. None of these people really believe in y'all anyway. I got news for you. You're way too fucking phony. Everybody knows now because you don't even act like you believe yourselves. So nobody believes in you. So there's no connection with the fans. A connection with the fans is when a motherfucker will go to jail and spend the night because he could not restrain himself from coming over that rail and fucking taking a shot at or swinging a knife at the guy that was fucking you around, because he knew at that point in time in his mind that he was the only person in that building that was able to physically save you from getting your ass handed to you by whatever was happening. That's a connection. Cody, you ain't got that. Nobody else does either. So I wouldn't worry if I was Cody about. The only thing I'd worry about switching heel is if Tony Khan booked it. Then it would destroy his connection. Probably his fucking cable service, too.
Well, Jim, another question we've received from several people since we talked about the Hall of Fame, but I don't know if we specifically addressed this. This was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Todd Dilly.
Another Todd.
I wanted to know if either of you watched Kane's Hall of Fame speech from last week. He thanked Jim during the speech as one of the 4 men whom were most responsible for helping him get a job in WWE. His friend Mark Morton, Jim Ross, and Dutch Mantell were the others. I wanted to hear Jim's thoughts on this, and his thoughts on working with Glenn Jacobs during his career. Did you see the speech that he thanked you?
No, actually, somebody tweeted. Maybe I saw it did they use it in a package? I didn't see the whole unedited speech. I saw either a tweet or a clip that line was in there, and he mentioned me and JR and Dutch, and his friend who I do not know, but he was instrumental for Glenn. But I didn't see the whole speech. But I was, happy and glad that he mentioned me and us, because that was kind of the chain of it. Dutch was booking Puerto Rico and brought him down and pushed him as much as he could and gave him as much experience and, advice as he could. And then Dutch called me and said, hey, this kid, he's from Missouri. He wants to come back home to, he's got island fever and he just needs to get out of Puerto Rico. And so I booked him from there. And then obviously JR saw him and was instantly a fan. So, as far, I've talked about working with Glenn a bunch, and again, I know there's politics going on these days, and I wish he was a Democrat, and then I'd have absolutely nothing bad to say about Glenn whatsoever, but at least a libertarian ain't a Republican, and I don't want to know hooty hoot, if he said anything good about Donald Trump. I don't want to know who. But as far as dealings in the wrestling business, Glenn's been a model guy. That's why he's still there for any shots that he wants to make. Why he's still a legendary name from that time period. He's since 1995, he has been affiliated. That has to be the longest uninterrupted stretch of anybody except the Brooklyn Brawler and Finkel. He's a good guy. He took the business seriously. He was never getting bad publicity or causing trouble. You never got a phone call about Glenn Jacobs, whether it was Smoky Mountain Wrestling or the WWF or anything. You could depend on him. If he was supposed to be somewhere, you knew he was going to be there. He had no bad habits. He's been a phenomenal talent, a great worker. And even though they've done screwy stuff with the Kane gimmick and kind of really, just changed it all around from the original concept, he has done the best that he could with whatever they gave him, and people still get a fucking kick out of him when he shows up. So I can't say, except for politics, and I don't even want to go into it. Glenn's been great, and I've always enjoyed dealing with Glenn.
How does it make you feel that you were one of 4 people he singled out and thanked?
Well, I said I was glad that he did, and I appreciated it. And but it was the truth. It wasn't a stretch. It was his buddy who helped him out, and it was me and Dutch and JR. And that's pretty much how he got. I mean, the rest was up to him. And we've mentioned that, even JR and I couldn't stop the fake diesel and the goddamn dentist. But sooner or later, right in the nick of time when Vince was going to give up on it, there came Kane, and he took it and ran with it and did a great job.
Well, it's just about getting the appreciation. I didn't know about this book. Somehow it was completely off my radar. But I purchased Brock Lesnar's book from a decade ago or something.
Oh, yeah.
Written by him and Paul Heyman.
He's never read one, much less written one. It was ghost written by somebody, but yeah.
But in it, he talks about OVW. There's never a mention of you. It's all OVW, Danny Davis, Louisville. Got out of there.
Yeah, because I saw from this. What's that old fucking song? I had your number as soon as you walk through the door. Don't call us, child. We'll call you. Sugarloaf. From the start, I could tell. He had no personality because he was sullen. He wasn't outgoing. He wasn't a wrestling fan. He wasn't a fucking cut up in the locker room. He had been catered to as a star athlete in these fucking cow towns that he grew up in South Dakota or whatever. He wasn't working as hard as the other guys were working because he was a natural genetic freak and didn't have to. But he was somewhat boring and not particularly well suited to the personality side of this business, which is why that I gave Shelton to him as a tag team partner, because Shelton could do everything and was exciting and actually likable. Brock was not I wanted him as a babyface because he was a NCAA heavyweight champion from just a few years previous. So it's not like, he an all-American hero, and also he wasn't ready to be a heel yet. He was a heel personality, but he was a shitty pro wrestler. He hadn't learned anything. He didn't know anything. So he started out as a babyface because that was going to be easier, but he didn't want to be a babyface. He didn't like to be nice to the people. One time, a couple of people started hooting him at the St. Therese Church Gym show, and he gets on a microphone, cuts a heel promo on them. So when he came back up, I said, "Do you enjoy turning heel?" I said, "Now, you're going to fucking be a goddamn babyface from here on out. If Vince McMahon, who's paying you this $250,000 a year, wants you to be a goddamn ballet dancer, you'll be wearing a tutu on Broadway. So don't cut any more goddamn heel promos when you're supposed to be a babyface. Learn how to make them like you or find a new line of business." He didn't like that shit. He was constantly trying to get out of OVW from the time that he showed up, because he didn't want to be down here training with the guys. He wanted to be training with Brad Rangens in Minnesota in a barn. And that's when he pulled my girlfriend's pregnant. I got to go back home for 6 months. He was making 5 times at least what the other developmental guys were making, wasn't working as hard, didn't want to be involved in the program, and was trying to find excuses to get out of it. So I didn't push him as hard as I would have pushed somebody that was really into it, because I knew he had the physical capability. But, he was just, and he was always, he loved Danny Davis, because Danny Davis was that broken nose, pug nose, tough ass bastard. He was a coach. Brock liked coaches. But he would piss off the referees, the managers. Maybe Chris K, one referee, made him cry, browbeating him some kind of way. And he was not enamored of the program. And him and fucking Batista, because Batista ended up sucking up to Triple H. He and Batista are the only ones that had anything bad to say about OVW. Because in Brock's case, he didn't want to be there to begin with. And in Batista's case, he was just a pussy-whipped, fucking frail fucking guy that didn't understand the business he was suddenly in and didn't like the gimmick that I gave him, because it wasn't him. He fancied himself James Bond, which is what he got to be when he became the son-in-law's favorite workout partner. But I didn't see James Bond. I saw a fucking mid-30s guy, greener than a pepper tree, injury-prone, and pussy-whipped and browbeaten by his wife. But anyway,
Yeah, is there an ending to that?
No, I'm just saying that. So they're the two. You asked about Brock didn't say anything about OVW really or anything. Everybody else, it was one of the high points of their career and they learned so much. But those two, because they were their own individual, they were each one of them a bird in this world. They didn't like it. I didn't care.
All right, Jim, our final question this week, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Darren Walker in London. What are Jim's views on Doink the Clown, the character? I thought the heel Doink was brilliant and well played by Matt Bourne. Also, any stories about Matt Bourne as well?
Oh, good Lord. I get the appeal of Doink the Clown the way that Matt Bourne did it. I wouldn't have ever done it if it had been me. Because of course, and it got really silly. Matt Bourne was a dark, demented individual, and so he was able to bring that creativity and that part into the thing. But all it was from the WWF side was, oh, we've got an evil clown. The visual was ridiculous. The Doink music, when they had the midget clown, the Dink, and the fucking little Dinkettes and all that shit. Matt Bourne did a great job with it, and it's one of those things that and also he could work, but it's one of those things that you have to be there from the start, having been watching the TV, understanding how it developed, and understanding why he's there, because it's one of those things that when you just had it on your show, and somebody new tuned in or didn't know what was going on or didn't understand it, the visual was just fucking stupid. A fucking wrestling clown and the fucking horn honking and the noise making and all the noise. It was like a goddamn Dr. Seuss nightmare on acid come to life. And then when he was gone and they had it just got really just stupid and silly. So, I'm not a big fan of wrestling clowns. Imagine that.
Is there anyone else you think would have been good in that role other than Matt Bourne?
That's the first time I've ever been asked that question. If I would recast the role of Doink the Clown.
The original Doink, when eventually Phil Apollo did it, it was a complete baby face. There was nothing of any value in that character. But when he was the heel Doink, there was a demonic mystery to the guy.
Yeah.
And Bourne played it well.
Ray Apollo, excuse me. Ray Apollo just wanted to check, and he's a nice guy, and he knew he lucked into a spot there, and he was just going to be the wacky clown because he didn't give a fuck. He's getting paid. But yeah, Matt Bourne was the kind of weirdo that would fucking put all the mental things and the twistedness and the darkness into it, and it might have been best for him. Maybe. Who knows? Maybe that was the crowning achievement of his in-ring career. Because his other contribution was if he'd have kept his dick in his pants, there'd have been no Road Warriors. So there's always that. So Matt Bourne did do good things for Arn Anderson was not a fucking fan till the and also didn't
Jim
Bourne
Duggan wasn't a fan.
Shoot on Jim Duggan for some fucking reason.
It may have been mutual shooting in that case. Because the story was they had a lot of problems. That's why they broke up the Rat Pack in Mid-South. Duggan had a lot of problems with Matt Bourne. There was a locker room fight at one point. That's the one with the famous story that Tony Atlas told where he was working there and Ernie Ladd was separating Bourne and Duggan and Ernie's knees were giving out. So he's like sinking to the ground. He's like, Tony Atlas, keep these men away from each other. That's Ernie's going down.
He slowly sinks into. Well, all I know is if Jim Duggan and Matt Bourne had a problem, who wins the prize of being the asshole in that situation had to be Matt Bourne. Is all I'm going to say. Okay, if anybody could have a problem with Hacksaw. But yeah, so he's famous for being the world's wrestling's best evil clown, and if it wasn't for his sexual practices, there'd be no Road Warriors. And a great dressing room fight involving Ernie Ladd. That's what Matt Bourne's noted for.
Well, with that, the drive-thru is closed.
Get out while we can.
course, you can hear the Jim Cornette Experience when it debuts this Saturday, wherever you find your favorite podcast. The Drive-Thru back at you next Tuesday, same location. You can get classic episodes of The Drive-Thru and The Experience by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Cornette. Full episodes of The Drive-Thru and The Experience going back to the beginning in 2013. Episodes added each and every week. Check out the archive, patreon.com/Cornette. You can follow Jim on Twitter at @TheJimCornette. You can follow me on Twitter at GreatBrianLast. You can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast at 605pod.com. Available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Don't forget about the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette. It'll be the first thing that pops up. Clips, full episodes, and omnibus collections, all with Travis Heckel artwork. Check it out today, the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Cornette's Collectibles at JimCornette.com. At this pace, it'll be open for maybe a week or two for the entire year.
We will be opening for at least a week, sometime maybe in May, and then we'll get slammed and we'll shut down again. This merchandise is very rare and sought after, folks. It's going to kill me, that's for sure.
JimCornette.com. The Drive-Thru is brought to you by the Law Office of Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen at newlawoffice.com. But until Saturday on The Experience, and next week right back here on The Drive-Thru, for Jim Cornette, I'm the Great Brian Last. Tally-ho!